Ahead on American Sunrise Early Edition, the gut-wrenching scenes of devastation and sorrow just kept coming out of Texas over the weekend as massive and freakish floods swept so many lives and property away. At least 82 people are now confirmed dead, 28 of them children. But as it is with every tragedy, there are those who insist on trying to use this flood for political gain. Without much evidence, opportunists immediately are throwing blame around, even as rescue and search crews are still battling the odds. Later today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will visit President Trump at the White House. What's their next move, as hopes for the end to the war in Gaza hang in the balance? Elon Musk makes it official. He's filed to begin a new centrist America party. He's got the cash to build it up, but will he get any votes? And could Pennsylvania Senator John Federman try to do almost the same thing? Federman's July 4th post about patriotism and the Democrats raises questions about whether he's up for transforming his own party. American Sunrise Early Edition begins now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome, everyone. I hope you had a great July 4th weekend. I'm Jake Novak. This is a Monday edition of American Sunrise Early Edition. I know there's some tough stories coming out of Texas all weekend, and most of us have been following that with compassion and with concern. And one of the people doing that, along with all of us, is David Pollack. He's going to join us now. He's the state director of the Florida Conservative Caucus. And David, I know you join me in praying for the victims of the Texas floods. And, you know, it's worth reminding everyone that these students and young people, you know, it's got to be our first concern as we look at this. And, you know, again, it's also interesting to see President Trump immediately jumping in and talking about, first of all, he's going to visit the scene on Friday. As you know, President Trump doesn't like to go in the days when all the stuff is still going on. He'll only be a distraction and a drain on the resources. But there's already been a pledge by the Trump administration to fix some of these problems that cause this. What's your initial thoughts about this? I mean, is this a question of changing the way the government deals with this? Or was it a freakish flood that's only going to happen once every several hundred years, and we just have to do our best for search and rescue?
Well, let's start right at the very top. It didn't take much time for Democrats and their friends in the fake news media to run out there and find some sort of nexus to President Trump. I mean, they looked at, how are we going to blame this on Trump, they said. And then what do? They said, well, let's try to tie Doge cuts, scheduled Doge cuts on satellites and global warming research, and somehow tie that to this flood. And then from there, they started, of course, leaving out key facts and making it seem as if any of these cuts to the National Weather Service somehow led to prediction failures and forecast issues that allowed these people to become victims of this horrific flood. When the reality is, and at this point, if you do any simple research, people will know that the warnings did go out early. The flash flood alert, the high alert came out on time. People were made aware. The forecast, literally the only thing that you can try to find fault in is that they thought less rain would fall. But to predict a storm stalling in the manner that it did over the vulnerable place that it did and the resulting tragedy. And we saw something similar to this in North Carolina when Biden was president. And Doge cuts did have anything to do with people in the mountains not knowing the amount of rainfall that would come down and the remnants of that storm there. So the idea that Trump Doge cuts somehow had anything to do with people not being aware that this flood was coming is complete nonsense. The warnings came in the middle of the night. People were sleeping. The real question here, Jake, is what are we going to do about people living in places next to rivers that historically crest? Yes, it's once every few hundred years, but guess what's happened over the last 100 years? People have literally moved everywhere, even in the undesirable places that haven't been developed for a very long time. And as people move into these places that historically have flooded, that have not been developed until recently, these things occur. We saw this in New Orleans with Katrina. We saw this in North Carolina and Appalachia. Now, Appalachia was a little bit different of a situation, but now we have another tragedy in Texas. And so I think Trump is right to go down to Texas because, one, to dispute the claims that somehow cuts led to this tragedy, because the families deserve better and they need to know that this wasn't preventable necessarily with warnings. And two, it's important that Trump put out the information that he's there to help, to give people some peace, to provide support, and to lay out the plan to prevent tragedies like this from happening again, because we need to do better with flood warning as a nation. We do a lot of advanced warnings with hurricanes and tornadoes. Now even we're getting better at predicting these floods, flash floods. We need to come up with some early warning systems, whether it be sirens or whatever. So I think this trip is very important.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting. I'd love to hear some of the new technology. There's always somebody who has a technological, not a complete solution, but there's probably some new technology as well that can protect some of these communities. Now, David, this is the time for what I am about to do, which is to recognize and say a name everyone American should be talking about. Instead of doing the political blame game, America and the news media should be spending all of that energy talking about a major number of heroes in this entire story, especially the Coast Guard rescue swimmer and petty officer who has now been credited with saving, get this, 165 lives. Everyone agrees this has got to be a record. His name is Scott Ruskin. He's from New Jersey, so from this general area. I'm going to take a little bit of credit, and I'm just kidding, but I'm rooting for him. This is an issue in the news media, David. It's not just that there's political bias. There's also bias in favor of doom and gloom and a belief in every newsroom in America, and I've worked in a lot of them, that the only way the American people will watch your product is if you have something frightening, horrible, and horrific to show them. That's not true. Teach people in your newsrooms, teach people in your journalism schools how to do stories about heroes, because I don't think they know how to do this. And while I saw on social media a lot of stuff about Scott Ruskin, I didn't see any specific long portrayal of him on the establishment media. So again, I mean, we have to talk about heroes when they do come around. And in these incidents, I'm not talking about wars here. In these incidents, there always are a lot of heroes, aren't there?
Well, yeah, and of course the media doesn't want to report that, because a positive story out of this, they can't spin and use that outrage to somehow hurt Trump, and that's how sick they've become. You're exactly right, though, and it's an excellent point about the news coverage being negative. I don't even let my kids watch the news. I haven't in a very long time, because every other story is about terrible things. And when you can go to other countries, you go to Europe, you go to South America, Central America, you turn on their news, there's people dancing, there's stories of markets and festivals. And that was one of the things that struck me most the first time I traveled overseas when I was younger, when I turned on the news and I'm like, wow, there's nothing bad happening. And then you turn on CNN International or whatever you were watching, and it just like made the United States look like it was crumbling. I don't know what the obsession is with the bad, and the good that's coming out of this tragedy, of course, is always inspiring. In every tragedy, there's always these good, inspiring stories. But yes, you're right. The media wants to ignore it. They want to paint this dark picture. And then somehow they find a way to politicize it and make it seem like Donald Trump or whatever Republican is in charge. They did this with George Bush after Katrina. Remember, somehow George Bush was responsible for one of the worst hurricanes to ever hit New Orleans, rather than the inspiring stories of all the people that rescued those folks that became victims to really a failure in engineering and bad community planning policies. And this is constantly the theme. And we do need to be more responsible and do a better job with reporting on the good, because people need good things in their lives. They need to hear the positive, because this country is a great country, and a lot of great stories like this one do come out every day.
Yeah. All right, let's get into the politics, because the big political story over the weekend is that Elon Musk has filed to start the America Party. It's his third party plans. And, there's a lot of discussion about this, whether this is a personal issue that Musk has or anything of the sort. But to me, this is really the result of a bad reading of history. First of all, the very, very recent history. Elon Musk, remember, poured a ton of money into that Wisconsin State Supreme Court election. He even showed up a bunch of times. That didn't work. Also, in the history of this country, if you really want to get tremendous results and you're not liking where the parties are, you have much more history showing that reforming your party within your party is the way to go. I think the most recent person to really pull that off was Bill Clinton in the Democratic Party in 1992, pulling it more to the center. You could argue that Donald Trump did that with the Republican Party, but I don't think he set out to change the Republican Party. I think he went to the nation first and maybe his party second. Bill Clinton successfully moved the Democratic Party to the center until Obama pushed it way over to the left again. That's where Elon Musk should be spending his money and his efforts if he knows his history, but I don't think he does.
This topic has just been so fascinating over the weekend. So many different conversations and takes. And the initial gut reaction from most people was that if Elon starts this party, this is bad for Republicans. I had the same theory. I thought about it a lot. And to your point, you're right. Donald Trump didn't set out to change the Republican Party. But what he did when he came down an escalator in 2015 was he gave a lot of frustrated Republicans a new home in the Republican Party, because for the longest time, the Republicans didn't feel really like their voice was being heard. I was one of them. And then you heard Donald Trump come down an escalator and start saying the things that we were so frustrated about for so long. And it wasn't just Republicans. It was centrists and independents and Democrats and all kinds of people, libertarians, who, and especially you saw this in 2024, who rallied around this idea that America belongs to its people, not to Democrats, not to Republicans, but to us. And you heard that in his inaugural address in 2016. But here's the deal. I'm not worried about Elon Musk starting a third party. And here's why. First of all, it takes all other third parties have been started by people who had some kind of political clout or some sort of organization in place, whether it be former presidents or former presidential candidates. Elon Musk, and I respect him tremendously. He's done amazing things for our country. I think he's frustrated. I understand that he's frustrated. A lot of us are. But the idea that he's going to start this third party and somehow even get ballot access in a hurry and to affect the 2026 midterm elections, I think he's in for a much bigger project than he's realizing. I think if Elon Musk wants to make a difference, and I understand his frustration, I really do. Local elections. Take some of your billions of dollars, Elon, and get involved in local elections, because when you change your city councils and your school boards and your county commissions, even your state house races, you start to change the culture of the Republican Party. But you can't change the culture of the Republican Party at the very, very top, at the tippy top in Washington, D.C. If you don't like the way Republicans vote, you have to stop the mechanism of putting those types of Republicans in Washington. And the way to do that is get involved locally, strengthen your local GOPs, give the MAGA base of the Republican Party, who's constantly fighting Republicans, give them a voice with your bank account. So I think Elon's efforts are going to be way better spent getting involved in Republican politics, because if you look at the two parties, the only America party right now is the Republican Party. The other party doesn't want to see America survive. So Elon, if you want to save America, what you have to do is help MAGA Republicans take back the Republican Party. And then I think you'd be a lot happier with it.
Yeah, I only have about 20 seconds left, but I actually think a more compelling and potentially really interesting story over the next year or so is going on the Democrat side, because I keep seeing Senator John Federman do posts like this. He had a post just going into the July 4th weekend decrying that poll that a lot of us talked about in the news media last week about how Democrats are much less likely to be patriotic than Republicans. It's a really low number, and Federman is very upset about this. Now, I don't know if he has higher aspirations. I don't know the status of his health condition all that much. But when I see him posting things like this, and again, as I draw back on the history of people like Bill Clinton in 1992, I'm saying to myself that if someone wants to reform a party in America, John Federman could do it if he wants to. I actually think there's enough people who sort of are still registered Democrat or who would rather see the party get more centrist. And I think he could really, really ride that successfully if he wants to. Don't know if he wants to. And the only reason why I'm interested in that is I would rather see a less radical party in America. I don't care if they're called the Democrats, the Socialists, or the Monkeys. I don't really care what you call them. I just want to see, or the Beatles, or whatever group you want to call them. I want to see less radicalism in America. I'd love for him to try to do this. What do you think? Could he possibly do it? I'm sorry, I only have a couple seconds left.
No, you're fine. I think he'll try. The Democrats will eat him up, just like they did RFK, just like they did Tulsi Gabbard, and then you'll see him shifting to an independent, like you tend to do with centrists like him, because the Democrats have no tolerance for anybody who disagrees with them.
Yeah, it's a shame. But again, I don't think I'd ever vote for him, but I'd love to see him move the party a little bit more to the middle. All right, David Pollack, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great rest of your week.
Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Coming up, this is probably one of those Democrats that John Federman should talk to first, if he really means what he says. You'll hear the latest foolishness from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett. Get yourself ready for that. And The experts have been studying all the data, and which big city do you think came in as the #1 most dangerous area to drive in America? Take your guesses, and I'll have the answer just a little bit later on this program as American Sunrise Early Edition continues. So here's what I like about the new flagpoles at the White House, besides the fact that before those flagpoles, you didn't see an American flag that clearly. It now gives us a little bit of a weather forecast as well. And as you can see, the flags are barely fluttering, which means it's another really hot and humid day in our nation's capital. I'm Jake Novak. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Thank you especially to those of you in the Getter and Rumble chat. It is very hot and heavy going right now in the Getter chat. A lot of people jumping in right away and talking and getting into it. I love it. I don't like a passive audience. I like everyone making comments, and I get a chance to check them out. There are 4 new polls out, by the way, in the last few days about illegal immigration. And not one of them is from a so-called conservative or Republican pollster. So that's why this is really interesting. All of them show a clear majority of Americans support deporting all, that's right, all illegal immigrants. The numbers go from 55% in the New York Times to 64% in the Marquette poll. This is really, really extraordinary. You would think that with all the efforts the mainstream media, the Democrats, and other people on social media have been pushing into making deportation of illegal aliens into some kind of new Nazi agenda, that you would think that those poll numbers would be much lower. Remember, the opposite numbers in those polls, these are not zero-sum game polls. In other words, there's a number of people who are undecided. So even in that New York Times poll where it's 55% are in favor of deporting all illegal aliens, it isn't 45% against. And even then, it would be a pretty nice majority in today's America. But it's more like in the 30s and the high 20s. This is a very, very clear issue in America right now. Politicians who support illegal aliens do so at their own peril. And again, I think this adds to my theory that the people who are doing this, it's not that they're stupid. They can read polls just like you and I. They absolutely must be getting funding to do this. They must be getting really big campaign donations to make these suicidal political positions. That's the only explanation. I've been working on it. I've been talking to people who investigate this, and I'm going to hope to have some real hard numbers to back me up in the coming months. But that seems to be the only explanation. All right, well, with that kind of support for illegal aliens, you can be sure the smart politicians from both parties would either not talk about opposing deportations or simply see it the way the majority of Americans do. Maybe come over. Maybe if you can't be in us, join us. Well, spoiler alert, Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett is not one of the smart ones. Listen to this.
As far as I'm concerned, you randomly kidnapping folk and you throwing them out of the country against their civil rights, against their constitutional rights. And frankly, how would they feel if some other country decided that they were going to just start throwing people randomly in our country? Like that is absolutely insane. So yes, all I got to say is y'all need to get these fools out of here.
Jasmine, that's exactly what happened. People have been randomly throwing people into this country for decades. That's the whole point. But, you know, maybe she's crazy like a fox. I think that some politicians who are aggressively and supporting illegal aliens are obviously say it and do it a lot smarter than she does. But she's probably on the payroll, too. However, if you are one of the people who's funding Jasmine Crockett to support illegal aliens and to oppose deportations, maybe give her a script next time, because she really is becoming a human laugh track. All right. Since Trump was sworn in, his administration has been making enormous economic progress. It's been at a breakneck pace. But don't forget, while they're moving mountains for the good of the nation, they can't also take your personal savings into account. You have to do that. One of the best ways to look after your savings is through diversification, particularly with gold, from my trusted friends at Birch Gold Group. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 40%. Central banks continue to bolster demand for gold by buying in record quantities. Global instability and tension is the highest in decades. Birch Gold makes owning physical gold extremely easy, and it's easily to be converted into an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA and physical gold. Or buy some to store in your home safe. Just text my name, Jake, and also text America to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of your savings today. Text the word America to 989898. Okay, coming up, while all the political types like us are arguing about CBS News and its parent company Paramount's issues with the truth and their political bias, the folks with real skin in the game look at CBS and see something else entirely. I'll have that and more money news, and also the answer to the question about what's the most dangerous city in America to drive when American Sunrise Early Edition roars right back. You know, I'm getting on this program early this morning at the beginning of the program talking about how the news media has a bias in favor of gloom and doom. And then the control room gives me this gloomy and doomy shot of New York. Come on, guys. No, just kidding. That is an interesting shot. It's definitely artistic. That's New York Harbor, and you can barely see the top of the buildings through the fog. We are expected to have rain like every day for the next 10 days in New York. I was looking at my weather stuff. Hopefully that won't be true. Let's take a look at where the markets are going to begin today as we begin this next segment here on American Sunrise Early Edition. The markets have been on a nice winning streak, as you know, and it looks like they're going to open slightly lower today. As I'm taking a look here, nothing serious, although the Nasdaq almost a half a percentage point down. Gold is down a little bit. Crude oil is flat, 66, really almost exactly $67 a barrel. Let's take a look at Bitcoin, and I think Bitcoin is again. If you've been watching this program, you know we've been stuck between 104,000 and 110,000 for weeks and weeks and weeks. We still are, although we are now at the upper end of that. So again, we'll see if the rally continues. A lot of days this last few weeks, we've had lower opens only to see the market close pretty clearly higher. And let's see if that happens again today. Well, President Trump keeps changing the terms, or at least the public terms. I think he's playing this game pretty well, but maybe not, but maybe he isn't. Listen, folks, I think this is interesting. He keeps changing the terms of the tariff and when the dates are going to go into effect. He did it again yesterday, now saying that the new tariffs will go into effect on August 1st instead of this Wednesday. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary, also joining in that explanation. One of the things that, again, this is something that most of the news media doesn't understand, is it's not up to us in the news media to dictate the terms and to let everyone know about what's going on and basically what are private negotiations. Should they be completely public? Well, maybe yes, maybe no. I don't have a problem if that's always the case, especially if they're not discussing some secret matters. But as we found out with the EU, there are some things that probably shouldn't be public knowledge. For example, in our EU negotiations, we've been talking about the EU buying some of our sensitive weapons systems, our defense systems. So again, not all of this can be above board. But for those of us who think, hey, we deserve to have every single detail about when the tariffs are going to go into effect and when they're not, relax, take it easy. This is the way negotiations go. For those of you who are sports fans, you know that we don't always know what's going on when the big ball players get major contracts either. Let's see how this fleshes out. The markets, they've been starting to guess it right just a little bit better. The markets were freaking out just a couple of months every time there was a change. Now they seem to be taking it much more in stride. As you saw, the futures are not terribly in the red right now this morning. And who knows, we might finish up again at the end of the day. All right, it begins. Some of the 5.3 million Americans who have delinquent student loan debt have now begun to see smaller paychecks as part of the wage garnishment policy the Trump administration put into effect in April. We talked about this in April on this program, letting everyone know that wage garnishments would begin. They have now begun in the last couple of weeks, people looking at their paychecks. Again, I'm hoping that this will start a movement in America, not against the young kids or the people in their early 30s who are working at Starbucks. They're not the ones who are the problem, although they are responsible. I'm not exonerating them of any responsibility. But ultimately, this is something that the universities themselves are responsible for. They have taken advantage of the law. They've taken advantage of the student loan structure to gouge the public. And all of us who get angry at gas prices or drug prices or grocery prices, I don't understand why there isn't a popular movement in America to talk about tuition prices, which dwarf all of those combined. And I'd love to see the colleges be forced to lower their prices and stop getting tax breaks and incentives to charge the highest sticker price possible. That's what's going on here in America. Yes, those kids should have been more responsible. And believe me, they're paying for it. And I don't have a problem with them paying for it. But I'd like to see the colleges change their policies. Okay, if you think the big settlement CBS News parent Paramount Global just made with President Trump is hurting the future of the news division, you may be making assumptions that ignore the obvious. Who cares about the news division if you've got big money and you're buying CBS like this private equity group that is buying this organization? They are buying it not for the news, not for Walter Cronkite, who's been dead, not for decades, not for Dan Rather, who's really almost on his last legs. They're not buying it for 60 Minutes. They're buying it for the NFL. The NFL as an entertainment property in America is the most successful entertainment property. It is America's addiction. It's one of the few entertainment properties, if not the only entertainment property, that's just as popular with white people as it is with black people, poor people as it is with rich people, and everything down the line. CBS has a major NFL contract. That's where their biggest value is. And those private equity folks, Larry Ellison's son, they are interested in accentuating their NFL. Look for CBS to be all about the NFL even more than it already is once that sale goes through, and much less about news. That's the answer to that question. All right, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. It is Moving America, sponsored by Artillery Tea Company, artilleryteaco.com. Use promo code America's Tea for 10% off your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural, whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. artilleryteaco.com, promo code America's Tea for 10% off your first order. Well, it's Monday, so we might as well get the inevitable weekly bad news about Nissan out of the way now. Nissan is recalling almost 450,000 models of Altimas, Rogues, and Infiniti QX50s and QX55s for their VC turbo engines that could possibly fail. Now, the recall affects model years 2019 through 2024, but the years vary on those models, so contact your dealer or make sure you're looking for your emails or your phone calls. Make sure that you're looking for them. Make sure that your car is or isn't under recall, but that's a big one, 450,000. Now, remember that drive-through damage assessor from Hertz that I first showed you last month? Believe me, no other news station bothered to show that to you, at least not a national one. That's where you drive through a special AI-powered drive-through machine when you first take your car out at Hertz and when you bring it back, and it decides whether or not you have any damage. Here's the problem. This thing seems to be very, very nitpicky, including one guy who says that a smudge on the car turned into a $195 charge from Hertz just a few hours after he returned his car. Now, if this news gets out, and I think it should, people may not want to rent from Hertz anymore. Maybe they shouldn't have touted this thing as much as they thought. They thought they were telling customers, hey, this will get you in and out really faster. We won't do the inspection. You will be able to get to your flight. But if that AI machine is starting to charge people $200 for smudges and scratches that you can't even see, this is not going to be good for Hertz. So I think they need to fine-tune that machine just a little bit. Okay, valet parking is a big deal for people with fancy cars and in fancy places where they take them. So naturally, smart thieves are interested in valet parking too at the right places. In Plano, Texas, though, those thieves went a little bit too far. A gang of car thieves stole a $500,000 2024 Rolls-Royce Spectre on June 6 from a valet parking spot. Now, that triggered a multi-agency effort to get the crooks. That's what happens when you get a big score like that. And it indeed brought the heat. So cops said a few days later they traced the crooks to an address where they found that Spectre, another Rolls-Royce, this time a Rolls-Royce Cullinan, a Cadillac Escalade V, a Maserati Levante, an Audi RS7, the total value nearly $1.5 million. Now, these guys were not amateurs technically. Police say the suspects were seen on surveillance cameras dismantling part of a car's trunk, which disabled the GPS trackers. But they weren't too smart about getting rid of the evidence. But anyway, listen, if you're going to make big scores like this, you got to make the big score and then get out of town. They didn't learn that lesson. Okay, a little while ago, I asked you all to guess which American city is the most dangerous for drivers. The answer, Boston, Massachusetts. For those of you who live in the Northeast, you're probably not surprised. But this is what surprised me. The statistics are really bad. Bostonians drive an average just 3.1 years between accidents. That's it. That's compared to a 10.5-year average for the rest of the country. Every 3 years, they get into an accident. Brownsville, Texas, by the way, has the best safety average. They're at 14.1 years between accidents, and they drive a lot in Texas, so that's impressive. This was an all-state survey, a survey by the insurance company, looking at other insurers as well. If you've ever driven in Boston, they are incredibly aggressive there. Please be careful if you drive through there. Maybe take public transportation or an Uber, although I guess if you're an Uber, you could get into a crash too. Boston drivers, they're out of their minds. They always have been. Okay, coming up, the latest on the terrible floods down in Texas and the misplaced priorities so many people have when they're commenting on this tragedy. And why in the world would you interview the president of Iran? And on the 4th of July, too. He's not even the guy in charge over there, by the way, nor is he ever going to say anything truthful. American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. It's Monday, July 7th. Here are this morning's top stories. The gut-wrenching scenes of devastation and sorrow just keep coming out of Texas after that massive and freakish flood swept so many lives and property away. At least 82 people are now confirmed dead, 28 of them children. Later today, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu will visit President Trump at the White House. What's their next move, as hopes for the end to the war in Gaza hang in the balance? Elon Musk makes it official. He's filed to begin a new centrist America party. Well, he's got the cash to build it up, but will it get any votes? And why on earth would Tucker Carlson or anyone waste their time interviewing the president of Iran? Don't we have enough people bashing America and trying to make us feel bad right here inside our own borders? American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to those of you in the Getter and the Rumble chats. You're already off and running after that long weekend. You guys got a lot of rest, clearly, over the weekend because you were going strong. Joining me now is Sierra Claire. She's a professor and published writer on all things political and cultural. So, Sierra, let's start with something that's political and cultural. The obsession by the mainstream media, and many other people as well, to immediately look at this Texas flooding disaster and find a way to blame it on President Trump. Now, they've been pulling this kind of stuff at least since Hurricane Katrina, when they blamed that on George W. Bush. It's had diminishing success since then. I'm sorry to say that was a very successful smear campaign 20 years ago now, if you can believe it. But they're trying it again, despite the National Weather Service putting this out. The National Weather Service showing that they added extra staffers, and the AP reported this. They looked into it. They added extra staffers for this storm event. So this whole discussion of the gutted federal bureaucracy is really erroneous here. Sarah, please make this make sense. Why do people need to blame? I mean, is this like going back to ancient times when they would blame somebody in the community for the bad weather and then sacrifice them to the gods? I think this is what this is.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely baffling. 80 people were confirmed dead, and including 28 children. And we've seen a myriad of approaches from conservatives. Some people like President Trump wanted to leap right into action. Other people sent their condolences or focused on the amazing search and rescue efforts. So there's been a lot of different ways people have responded to this, but it's only the Democrats that immediately were talking about politics. They jumped to this wild speculation, as you pointed out, that's been debunked by the National Weather Service, the federal government, the Texas state government. And, I really thought they couldn't get any lower after the whole Abrego Garcia disaster. But, I guess this is what the Democratic Party stands for now, which is politicizing the deaths of children and having margaritas with foreign gang members.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe they'll find a way to do that and get some margaritas going. It is Texas after all, but it's really amazing to me. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about the positive stories about this a little later on. I guess all the folks in the U.S. and abroad who are obsessed with trying to pretend President Trump and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu should break up will be sad this evening, because it will be this evening that Prime Minister Netanyahu will be back at the White House. Look, we know what they're going to talk about. It's not just going to be about patting themselves on the back about the successful strike on Iran. They are now really trying to create some kind of hardcore timeline to end the war in Gaza, get the hostages back, and then to move on to a future for Gaza. What are you hoping for and expecting out of this meeting?
Yeah, I think the meeting should be very interesting. As you pointed out, a lot of focus on the hostages. I know the administration has been talking about that a lot in recent days and their efforts to support Israel in getting those hostages returned, which I think is what a lot of the future will hinge on as well. So that's very important, and I'm glad that they're focusing on that. And I also think it's good for the world to see that President Trump and Netanyahu have a close working relationship. They had a little bit of a riff during the ceasefire discussions, and President Trump expressed his displeasure with Iran and Israel at that time. But these, Trump and Netanyahu are both great statesmen, and they are able to put their differences aside and focus on what's really important, which is what we need from leaders in the Middle East right now. So I just think it's really good for people to see that and see them working together. And I'm excited to see what comes out of it.
Yeah, and I want everyone who's watching who's a little bit worried and thinking, boy, if the U.S. gets so friendly and so strong and shows that public friendship with Israel so much, as it is exemplified between President Trump and Netanyahu, won't that lead to trouble? And the answer is, historically, it actually leads to more peace. In 1973, when President Nixon stood strong with Israel, resupplied the military when they were losing a lot of their weapons and their machinery, the Arab world learned, hey, you know what? We're never going to break these two people up. The Soviet Union figured that out, too. And we started on that path towards the Israel-Egypt peace treaty. Same thing after the first Gulf War, when Israel stood with the United States, accepted the Scud missile attacks from Saddam Hussein, didn't get involved in the war against Iraq as President Bush, H.W. Bush, urged them to. And sure enough, within a year or so after the Gulf War, Jordan signed a peace treaty with Israel. And on down the line. When the world sees that the U.S. and Israel are friendly and are strong in their partnership, it leads to peace, not war. Yes, there might be some terrorists who are upset about it, but that's another story. I'm talking about overall nations and overall outlook. It has led to peace every time, so don't be nervous about that. Now, let's look at the other side, the enemy nations. Why on earth, Sierra, would anyone interview the president of Iran, especially on July 4th weekend, when we want to feel good about America? That's what Tucker Carlson did over the weekend. Now, here are two beefs I have with this. First, the first thing I said, you're not going to get any truth out of this guy. He's going to say terrible things about America. He's not. And even Carlson himself admitted, I couldn't ask him the hard questions because he won't answer them truthfully, which is a good reason not to do the interview in the first place. But here's my second beef with this, Sierra. The president of Iran has no functional power. He is a figurehead. It's like interviewing Prince William for anything other than talking about the ribbon cuttings he does and the suits that he and Kate Middleton and the clothes they wear. This guy is a figurehead. There's no point in talking to him. He's just a mouthpiece. You might as well talk to someone on social media who rips into the United States like Syrian Girl, that woman who gets all that money to bash America. I don't understand this. Please make it make sense, Sierra.
Yeah, I mean, it was, the timing was horrible. I definitely, agree with you on the 4th of July thing. That doesn't make any sense at all. And, as far as Tucker Carlson's argument that the American people might get something out of this, the Trump administration has been very transparent about their interactions with Iran and the diplomatic negotiations that they were pursuing with Iran, and how Iran has responded, which is by not talking to the U.S., insisting on using back channels and third parties. So for me as an American, I feel very comfortable. I know how Iran feels about America. I don't need to hear from, as you said, the figurehead. And then Tucker also mentioned something about that we were at war with Iran and we could be again, and so that's why he wanted to do this. But I think that is also, there's a lot of debate about that statement. I don't know that we were at war with Iran. And I think President Trump has made it clear he's doing everything possible to make sure that we're not at war with Iran. So the whole thing just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah. Iran's been at war with us for 46 years. Interviewing Tokyo Rose wouldn't help us learn any more about them. Sierra, but if Americans do want to focus on something that is going on overseas that involves Islamist terrorists and Christians, they ought to pay attention to Nigeria. Check out how one reporter asked the State Department spokeswoman about that late last week. Check this out.
Nigeria recently, more than 200 people were slaughtered earlier this month in a series of attacks on Christian villages by Islamic militants. Some 6,000 were displaced. What's state doing to address this? Is there anything state can do to address it?
Sierra, she went on to respond to say that they're looking into it. But what should all Americans know about this situation in Africa?
Well, I think President Trump and his administration are faced with a critical issue that was largely neglected by the Biden administration, and that's global terrorism. And combating terrorism is key to our national security, but the left has been totally absent on this issue. And the Biden administration wouldn't even utter the word terrorism, let alone fight it. They were too busy obsessing over their first world problems like pronouns. And meanwhile, real human rights crises, like the persecution of African Christians by ISIS, were swept under the rug. So now the threat has grown and we're seeing more deaths. And in the U.S., we have these protests on college campuses and people supporting Islamic terrorists. It just shows how out of touch the left is. And the facts on the ground in Nigeria are clear, and we know what's going on now thanks to the transparency from the State Department. This is religious persecution of Christians by Islamic terrorists who want to impose Sharia law. Where are the protesters who want to stand up for these people's rights? Where are the Democrats who are so concerned about foreign aid cuts on this issue? Not a one has mentioned it, yet they seem to have time to defend Hamas or Iran every chance they get. They don't really care about human rights. And we are not the world's policemen, but we should concern ourselves with issues that represent our values as Americans, such as religious freedom. So I would like to see and hear more from the Democrats on this issue and other, real human rights crises, and less about defending Hamas and Iranian terrorists.
Yeah, and I'd like to hear from other Republicans also. And let me give you a hot tip. If Christian groups in America started a large protest movement in support of African Christians who are being persecuted, a lot of other American groups, non-Christian groups, would join them. I can tell you that right now. I'd like to see it. This is an absolute effort that's it really should be made. Sierra Claire, thank you so much for waking up real early out in the West Coast for us, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, let me put my money, or at least my time, where my mouth is when it comes to the priorities the news media should have when reporting on tragedies like the Texas flooding. It's not all about the politicians. It's about the real heroes. David Brody will help me do that when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. That's a beautiful shot of Dallas, Texas this morning. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Of course, further down south in Texas, they are dealing with some of the worst flooding disaster that we've seen in this country in a long time. I know a lot of us, even though we enjoyed our July 4th weekends, I hope you did, were really gripped by what was going on in that story down in Texas all weekend. Joining me now is David Brody. And David, I promised at the beginning of the show to really try to put my money or my time where my mouth is. These tragedies have one thing in common. There are always some incredible heroes that emerge. And we did get one just the other day when Christy Nome told us about a guy named Scott Ruskin. He is a relatively new member of the Coast Guard. He is a rescue swimmer and petty officer. And, the Coast Guard, for those of us in the media capital of the world, New York, not that far. The Coast Guard Academy is in Connecticut. It's very close to New York City. So there's no excuse not to make more of the story about this guy. Get this, David. They are crediting him with saving 165 people, one guy. And they all say it's a record. They're not even going to bother they all know it's a record. This is incredible. Here's a picture of him as graduation, I guess. And I'm going to take a little credit for him, David. He's not from New York, but he's close. He's a Jersey guy. He's from Jersey. Scott Ruskin. And these are the kinds of stories that, and by the way, even in 9/11, and we did hear about heroes in 9/11, but still, the reporting in America is so focused on blame game, doom and gloom. And yes, this is a very sad story. And it's important that everyone knows the levels of the sadness here and the levels of the devastation. But if you spend more time trying to blame someone politically than giving credit to Scott Ruskin and people like him, then it isn't just your news or your politics I don't like. I'm wondering about your soul. I really am.
Yeah, and here's the sad news. If we started a good news network, and this has been tried before, the ratings would tank. They would. Sadly, this is what the media does, and this is what, sadly, a lot of folks don't necessarily want. We say they want it, but the truth of the matter is we do get caught up, all of us, in negativity and in tragedy. And so let's just not blame this on the media. I think we have some responsibility in this as well, if I'm being fully honest. Calvin Coolidge, not one of the best presidents in the world, for sure, but he had a great quote. He said, heroism is not only in the man, but in the actual occasion. And I think that is a great point and a great situation here specifically for what Scott Ruskin did here, because do we have heroism within us? I think many of us do. I think many of us don't know it. But when the occasion actually presents itself, some people shirk that responsibility and others rise to the occasion. And, to me, there are so many other Scott Ruskins out there. Quite frankly, there's so many in our audience today. Jake, honestly, do you have some Scott Ruskin in you? You do. I do as well. We don't think we do. But we do. The question is, are we going to act on it in the occasion? And to me, that's just unknown until it actually happens. But it's quite remarkable. And we should be thanking not only folks like Scott Ruskin, but so many of those other folks that came to the rescue of those.
My counterpoint to you about how it would never rate if you did a good news thing is that I've understood that for years because of the way that I've seen it approached. They do it the wrong way. It can't be happy talk and smiley face. It has to be the way you just did it, where we talk about a hero and talk about how it is in us, and we basically say, here are some of the really bad things that these people stand up to. You still use that alacrity and that hardcore. It makes it sound like it's real news, not like a smiley face thing. And I actually think it can be successful. But you guys are going to be successful on American Sunrise in the next 2 hours. I'll see you in the 9 a.m. hour, and I'll see the rest of you on Tuesday.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday. David, I'm sorry I've got to take a shot at you New Yorkers. You all can talk. Jeez, you all can talk. I've been watching the House floor. Hakeem Jeffries, the congressman from New York, he has been going at it for a couple of hours since I woke up. That's the first thing I did when I woke up this morning.
He was supposed to go about an hour, and that was, 2.5 hours ago? My sources are telling me he's going to go at least another hour. We'll see. And then here's the plan at this hour. What's going to happen after this is Speaker Mike Johnson will get on the floor. He'll speak for about 5 minutes. That's all he needs. Just 5 minutes, and let's move this thing to a vote.
After an all-night session, the House advanced the big, beautiful bill toward a final vote, which sets the stage for major Trump triumph ahead of the July 4th deadline, which is what he wanted. That was, of course, set by President Trump.
As it sits right now, I'm very optimistic. And the way I look at it is President Trump put out a Truth Social a little earlier saying, look, this is what the American people voted for. And these people that want to grandstand on their personal issues, that's on them.
Historic piece of legislation in his presidency that will save America, that will keep the largest tax increase in U.S. history from happening. And it's going to eliminate tax on tips, tax on overtime. It is a bill for the working class. And Mr. Jeffries, it's time to stop talking. Let's vote, let's get it done, and let's celebrate for America.
We're making sure that ineligible fraudsters no longer receive these benefits. And then we're implementing those work requirements for young people of the ability to work. And again, we protect the most vulnerable. But also I want to point out the border security measures, the investment in our military, putting America first. That's what this bill does.
History, we have an example in history with Donald Trump, with these tax cuts. They ignite the economy. There is no question about it. And all this doom and gloom, this Chicken Little stuff is not going to cut it. The facts disagree. The economy will boom under these Trump tax cuts.
Make America great again. How do we do that? We get Americans thinking on the same line. We might not agree on everything, but we feel good about ourselves. We feel good about our future. And in this case here, we're dealing with making a more robust middle class. And that is what drives our culture. So we're seeing something I think we'll all look back and say we're so proud and pleased and blessed to be part of it, because we've seen our country come back from the edge and come back in a big way that we're all very excited about. So just hold on to your hat. We're just getting started with this.
Ahead on American Sunrise, Texas continues recovering from devastating floods in Kerr County, and the death toll continues to rise. We'll have the very latest throughout the show. Plus, it is another full day for President Trump as he's scheduled to sign new executive orders and host Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at the White House. Ahead, we'll look into what to expect from today's meeting. And Elon Musk forms a new political party. As you can imagine, President Trump has plenty to say about it. We'll have those stories and so much more right now on American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
We have breaking news to share with you.
politics,
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
we've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina. Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Gina. We are live with you from the Palm Beaches. Let's bring in David Brody. He's in Washington, D.C. Terrence Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, gentlemen. It's not a good morning. I think our hearts are hurting. I think our hearts are so close to the victims. I think so many of us can relate. We all went to camp. We all have, our families have all camped. You know, I mean, it's just, you can relate to sort of the shock and despair that those families are experiencing right now, David Brody?
No, I mean, I can't imagine. I can't imagine. And we'll get into all of the details. But, right now, let's put the details aside and just look. Our human brains have limited capacity to understand things like this. And so we're going to get into the faith aspect of this a little later on. But the truth of the matter is that we're not going to know the answers, probably, this side of heaven. And we just need to rest in that and understand that and build our faith through that. I say our faith because it's the folks down in Texas, for sure, first and foremost. Mm-hmm. But tragedy affects all of us. And, look, my daughter has cancer. She's 23 years old. My father had the same cancer. My grandmother did. My grandfather did. My sister did. I did not. My 23-year-old daughter just finished chemotherapy. She does have it. So you don't know. And it's okay to say, what the heck, God? What the heck? That's okay. Look at Job in the Bible. So we can get into a lot of that later on. But our hearts, and when we say prayers, literally our prayers go out to them. And you know what? Prayer works. Whether or not you feel it in the moment, it does work. And but there's nothing flowery to say right now, T. Bates, right now.
No, I'll just add to that. Prayer does work, and God is listening. Whether he answers your prayers the way you want him to or not, he is listening. And his decisions, his choices, how he decides to handle your situation is always the right way because he is in control. And Dr. Jean, I think we should just leave it there and go straight to our Bible verse. I think that's the most appropriate course forward.
Yeah. Just interesting note that this week my Bible study was on hearing the voice of God, which I never spent a lot of time focusing on. But once you do, it is just like a whole new world. I never really thought about it as much as I thought about it this week. Today's Bible verse is from Luke 1:7-9. To give light to those who sit in darkness and the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. Certainly a nice calming verse. There are so many, though, that will speak just directly to you. And the most beautiful thing I love about the Bible, and someone said this to me again this week, is no matter how many times you read it, no matter how many times you've read a certain verse, when God decides to speak to you through a verse in a new way, you will hear it like you've never heard it. You'll hear parts of it and be like, I know that was in there before, but I never heard the voice of God in it. And I think that's one of the most amazing parts. So we will all pray the peace that surpasses all understanding to guard their hearts and their minds in Christ Jesus as they face these terrible, terrible tragedies. As we've been reporting, at least 80 people have been killed in the Texas floods. CNN reporting that a warning system was proposed back in 2016 for floods, but it was reportedly never installed. Although some are saying, look, it wouldn't matter. This just happened so fast. Authorities continuing rescue operations. GOP fundraiser Caroline Wren had this message on social media. She said, I went to camp for 10 years on the Guadalupe River, just a couple of miles down the road from Camp Mystic. This tragedy hits close to home. Since there's tons of information flying around, here's what I'm hearing from friends and family in the area and with the children at the camps. Camp Mystic, is an all-girls Christian camp on the Guadalupe River, opened in 1926 and has been run by the same family since the 1930s. Caroline Wren joins us now. Caroline, I didn't know this about you. You and I are friends and talk a lot back channel, but this is something that I think every American can relate to. There's something in the American experience that helps us. We've all seen the floods. Most of us have gone to camp or had some part in a camp. But it rings really true to something in the American fabric. What can you tell us about the things you're hearing from the people you know on the ground?
Well, for me, this started on the morning of July 4th, and I looked at my Facebook and started seeing a couple people post, please, anyone, can you help me? My best friend's daughter is missing. And it was 1, then 2, then 3, a post like that. They were the most horrific, terrifying things to see. And as that day, went along, we saw what happened to unfold. And I think it's hard to explain to people, especially a lot of the media covering this, these are New York City elites. They've never been to the Texas Hill Country. It's probably the most beautiful area, I think, in this country. It is very rugged, and it is home to a tremendous number of summer camps. There are 5 summer camps there that are pretty large, about 700 kids attend, and they're also long. When I started at Camp Waldemar, I was 8 years old, and you go for a month, and that's the same with Camp Mystic, which is right down the road. They're both all-girls camps. They are absolutely beautiful. People don't realize, too, I mean, your parents have to put you on a wait list when you're born to go to these camps. And it is the most uplifting, life-changing experience you can have, having the privilege to go. And so for these parents to have to go through this, it's really just terrifying. But kind of understanding more of what happened at these camps, I think, is important. First of all, the just historic level of water that came in the middle of the night. I can't even imagine. Your first day of camp, you are actually trained on if a flash flood comes. And I remember we always hated this part of camp because you're 10 years old, you're ready to just go, jump in the river or play soccer. And so they train you exactly where to go. But this hit at 4 o'clock in the morning. The river rose almost 40 feet in 2 hours. So can you imagine being the one to make the call to wake up and move 750 children at 3 a.m. in the pitch black in the middle of a torrential downpour? I don't know how to make that call. And in 1987, a similar thing happened in this exact area with the camp. They made the call to evacuate about 400 kids from the camp. One of those buses during the evacuation, these are all really small rural roads leading in and out of these camps going over bridges. Well, the bridge got overwhelmed with water, and that school bus filled with 43 kids washed away. 10 of those kids died. 33 others were plucked out of the river. So making the decision to put everyone into buses, and you're talking about thousands of children that are all in this region during this 2 months of time of the summer. Where are you even busing them to? So this was a horrific freak accident at Camp Mystic, which is where we have sadly, missing 27 children and counselors. Dick Eastland, his family has owned that camp since 1930. He is a wonderful man, and he died trying to save the lives of those campers. And from what we can tell, all the campers that are missing from Camp Mystic, they were in 2 cabins. And I was just reading an article from Dick Eastland's son. He went down there with his father to go try and rescue these kids. And he said what he saw, he can't even imagine it. There was a whirlpool that formed between these 2 kids' cabins that sucked all of those children in, including his father. And that is this is 15 feet above water levels where these cabins were. So before we're all judging the camps or others, just understand how rare this flood was, how awful this whole thing is, and just be praying and praying and praying for these families. I cannot imagine what they could be going through.
Yeah, it's unbelievable and unimaginable for so many of us. President Trump set to head to that region on Friday to try to offer comfort. And it seems to me in moments like this, sometimes just the presence of a commander-in-chief or of someone can at least ease for a moment some of the suffering. It doesn't take it away. It obviously doesn't reverse anything, but the presence at least shows that someone cares.
Yes, I'm thrilled he's going, and I was very glad that Secretary Noem went there. I think her presence was very welcome. She seemed to take a very commanding lead while on the ground. I think people are very pleased with the Texas officials who have stepped up as well. And, as we look towards, what are some things that we can thank God for? There's a camp about 2 miles downstream from Camp Mystic called Camp Heart of the Hills. It's also an all-girls camp with similar about 700 campers. They were between terms. Those campers were set to arrive July 6th, yesterday. Can you imagine being a parent and thinking, if your kid had just been there 2 days earlier, what could have happened? And instead they're home with you in your bed. You would be praying and thanking God so much. The owner of that camp, Jane Ragsdale, she was beloved. She passed away in the floods, going to try and rescue. The counselors had already arrived to prepare for the kids' arrival just 2 days from then. She went down there to try and rescue and warn the counselors. So this was, we can thank God that there was no campers there. A little bit, about 4 more miles downstream was another camp, Camp La Junta. That is the all-boys camp. That is where you've seen just harrowing tales of counselors. Keep in mind, these counselors are 17, 18, 19-year-old. Right. stories about them pulling kids out of the cabin through the windows, floating out of their mattresses, and miraculously every child at that camp survived. And so there are things to be thankful for, but there are certainly things that make you think, oh God, how could you do this and why? I like to focus on both the good and the tragedy.
Yeah, and Caroline, we have about 30 seconds or so. Everybody, starts talking about the warning systems and all that. But, I mean, it's very rural up there. I mean, this is not an easy place to necessarily get signals at all times.
No, and it has come out now that the NWS warnings, that they were accurate and timely, and that it was accurately staffed.
Right.
But understanding this region, no NWS radar can observe rapidly rising water. There are not enough people out at 4 a.m. to monitor every mile of the river and every low water crossing. And most importantly, there's no way to alert every individual or business, most of them asleep, to danger that was charging rapidly down the river. And to say that the county, to ask them to build a mile-by-mile monitoring system and a separate mile-by-mile alerting system, you are looking at an 8 to 9 figure expense, given how expansive, remote, and rugged this area is. So these are not that realistic of things. This was a once in 500-year flood, truly. And we've never had anything like this on record. And so to say that people, oh, you should have been prepared, how do you prepare for a once in 500-year flood? Exactly. It is, I think we need to let some more time happen, let these families grieve, and then of course there should be an after action report, but everyone I think is jumping the gun on that.
Yeah, they're, like the Bible says, there's a season for everything. And this is not the time to come in and everybody blame. I agree with you, Caroline. Our hearts and prayers are so with all of those affected. Thank you so much for sharing your very personal insight here. We appreciate it. And we're praying for everybody involved.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Caroline.
Coming up, we'll check out the hottest headlines from the Wrap Newsroom with T. Bates. And later, we take you live to Texas as the aftermath from the horrific floods continues. More American Sunrise in just 2 minutes.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
President Trump at the White House today. On Friday, he'll go to Texas to survey the just awful, horrendous damage and tragedy there. in the Hill County, northwest of San Antonio. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Coming up, speaking of the flooding, you can imagine continuous coverage here this morning on American Sunrise, including a live report from Ben Berkwam, who is at the scene. He was at the scene all weekend. We will get that in just moments. First, though, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
It's a big week for U.S. trade as President Trump says he is expecting finalization of several trade agreements in the coming days. The commander-in-chief also saying other countries will be notified of higher tariff rates by Wednesday.
President Trump's going to be sending letters to some of our trading partners saying that if you don't move things along, then on August 1st, you will boomerang back to your April 2nd tariff level. So I think we're going to see a lot of deals very quickly.
The president also expected to send letters to 100 smaller countries with whom the U.S. doesn't have much trade and notify them that they'll face higher tariff rates starting in August as well. In most cases, countries will face at least a 10% base tariff rate unless they reach an agreement with the Trump administration laying out different terms. A federal bench trial set to get underway today related to a lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's policies seeking to arrest and deport immigrant faculty and students who are participating in or have participated in pro-Hamas demonstrations and other anti-Semitic activities. The suit was filed by several university organizations and accuses the administration of supplying names to universities of people they want to target. The Justice Department argues the case is a, quote, misunderstanding of the First Amendment, which under binding Supreme Court precedent applies differently in the immigration context than it otherwise does domestically. We'll, of course, monitor today's hearing and update you of any resolution. The death toll from flash flooding in central Texas is hovering around 80 people at the moment, but it could rise throughout the coming days. Many of the dead were attending an all-girls summer camp when floodwaters tore through the cabins. Texas Governor Greg Abbott says 41 people are unaccounted for across the state and more could be missing. Kerr County is dealing with the most deaths as officials there are reporting 68 deaths, including 28 children. Forecasters say heavy rain is expected to last into tomorrow and could produce even more life-threatening flooding. During the first 36 hours following the storm, officials rescued more than 850 people. That's a quick check of your headlines. I'll have more headlines coming your way shortly, including Senate Republicans and Democrats have vastly different ways of handling Mexico's drug cartels. Find out what's actually being done, though. And next, a live report from Texas on the response to the catastrophic and deadly flooding there. Right now, though, a quick look at this day in history. It was on this date in 1898 that Congress annexed Hawaii through a joint resolution signed by President William McKinley. The islands then became a territory in 1900, which led the way for Hawaiian statehood in 1959. We're back in a moment.
Dallas, Texas, on a Monday morning, July 7th, 2025, here on American Sunrise. Welcome back to the show. Now to the devastating situation in Texas as rescue and recovery efforts from the deadly flooding in Kerr County continue this morning. At least 80 people have been confirmed dead. That number expected to rise. Rav has been on the ground throughout these tragic times over the weekend. Here, some of our reporting. Take a look.
A horrible tragedy down in Texas.
Deluge of rain. It came in hard and fast. What that resulted in was a deadly cresting.
In a matter of minutes, it was up to 29 feet.
Is nothing short of biblical.
I'm asking the people of Texas, do some serious praying this afternoon.
This is like a major hurricane.
The Camp Mystic Christian camp, some kids camped out for the 4th of July.
26 feet in 45 minutes? Is that possible?
You know, that is possible. Got 6 confirmed fatalities. I pray that that does not increase.
If they're alive and safe, we will find them and bring them home to you.
We're going to follow nonstop in Rural America's Voice, also over at Weather Nation.
This is right downtown Kerrville. When you see just trees snapped like twigs, pray for this community.
Today will be a hard day.
The town manager comes up and says it's going to be a very tough day today. I think that's a tell. We got people running to the sound of the guns to find these children, to rescue them.
Over 260 rescues yesterday. This is a positive note, obviously.
We recovered 27 deceased fatalities at this time.
It was an 8 and 9-year-old camp, and a couple of the camp buildings were swept away.
There are still 27 missing from Camp Mystic.
Back on your knees saying prayers.
We called 911 again. There was no big hole.
This kind of stuff really reminds you of what's really important. These communities all coming together. This is what America is all about.
Looks like some young people have died. We'll take care of them. We're working with the governor. It's a terrible thing.
We are going to address everybody's concern, and there is extraordinary collaboration.
We're finding people as fast as possible, and we're returning them to their families.
The city officials here immediately sprung into action.
We will rescue those in peril, and we will find those who are missing.
We're all working together, we're all communicating, and we will not stop.
You can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts. You're all in media, you got that forecast. It did not predict the amount of rain that we saw.
My thanks to President Trump and Secretary Noem for responding so quickly.
We still have work to do. We're still prayerful. We're still hopeful. We also have volunteers all over this county that do the job for free, that we're out there working to save lives, many times putting their own lives and their property at risk.
Having covered the North Carolina and Tennessee, Georgia, Hurricane Helene and the disaster, I mean, I'm already seeing a huge difference here, the way the federal government is. I just thank God President Trump's in there. I thank God Kristi Noem's in there. Lift them up in your prayers.
Our first responders are rock stars and heroes, what they do, and they're exhausted. They've been doing this now for several days, and it's not going to end anytime soon.
Lord, I just lift them up to you right now, especially if there's any girls that are still alive that are afraid, they're alone. I just pray you'd be with them right now. Lord, I pray in this situation that you would be the God of comfort to this community, but you would do miracles from now on, and we would see miracles happen. I pray for your hand on this community, in this state, in this nation. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. God bless America. We'll continue to cover it. Stay tuned.
You know, RAV correspondent and the host of Law and Border, Ben Berquam, has been in the thick of it all weekend long. He joins us now from Kerrville, Texas, about an hour northwest of San Antonio. Ben, I don't even really know what to say other than why don't you just take it from here and just relay what in the world is happening there this morning and some of the experiences that you saw over the weekend. Good morning.
Yeah, hey, good morning, guys. It's hard to describe. It's hard to quantify. If you haven't seen raging rivers, if you haven't seen a tidal wave of water and what that can do, it's just hard to imagine. And the devastation, you know, as a dad of 3 young girls, yeah, your heart just breaks. It just breaks for the community, and so. That's just my biggest thing is just keep praying for this community. I don't know how you put that back together. I don't know how when you lose all of your children or one of your children, where you go from there. And I know, sadly, it's just a part of life sometimes, but it's the worst part. And so I just keep praying. I'll show you what's behind me. This is one of the main bridges in town is behind the trees off in the distance. I'll get out of the shot here. And then if you look down here, this is one of the dams in the city, and it held, there's another dam at the bottom side, but I want to show you, so off in the distance there is still some wreckage. We were actually going through that wreckage yesterday. There was a car trapped underneath it, and they thought there might have been somebody in it, so I was there when they pulled it out. Thankfully, there was no one inside the vehicle, but there was another van up the river that is believed to be owned by a family that's missing, and I was there when they searched that van as well, and the family was not in it. They were believed to have washed downstream. But if you just look right here, if I just point it down at the bottom, there's a massive tree, and then there's a tire that's in the water as it goes over the waterfall, and you can just see that vortex of water, how it sucks it back in areas like this. A human body, even a vehicle, has no chance to swim out of something like that. And so, and this is low water. Where I'm standing was actually right at the water line. We're about just over 25 feet above the water line. So imagine that raging torrent up where I'm standing right now. And at 5 o'clock in the morning, on the 4th of July, you're anticipating, actually all the wreckage that's behind me over there was set up for the 4th of July fireworks that they have here every year. They have a band and a concert. All of that got washed out. And so it was just the worst possible set of variables at the worst time. And when you heard in that video, they were talking about the amount of rainfall predicted, 4 to 6 inches. In some areas, over 15 inches of rain fell. And so there's no way to prepare for that. When it happens that fast, people are calling for, the mainstream media is talking about, well, why wasn't there early advanced warning? And that's a decent question to say, why aren't there sirens? We have tornado sirens. Why don't we have flood sirens? There's a lot of questions that can be asked, but right now the biggest issue is finding the potentially recovering or rescuing those that are still alive. We're 72 hours into this thing. Typically, you're going to find the ones that are alive in that time period. The rest will be recoveries, and that's what the law enforcement and first responders are spending their time on, and they've been spending it 24/7 the last 3 days. They're nonstop. They're not sleeping. These guys are they're working their butts off. And I just lift them up in your prayers, lift the community up in your prayers, and especially the children that lost parents and the parents that lost children. Just pray. We need the Lord, His peace, His guidance in all of this.
Yes, we sure do. Ben, we've got less than a minute, maybe 30 seconds. Any sense on the ground there that they might find any survivors? Are they losing hope? I mean, this is an ongoing process, and boy, we want to see someone that has survived this, those stranded. We need, the country needs that right now. Gosh, it would be great to find someone that survived this.
Well, they did. In fact, over 24 hours, they found 2 girls. It was almost 2 days into it. They found 2 girls hanging from a tree 30 feet up in the air that had been washed several miles downstream. And it was nothing but the hand of God that saved them. So there are miracles that are happening in this, and we continue to pray for more. The law enforcement, they haven't lost hope, but in general, in these types of situations, the 72-hour mark is typically that window. If somebody's going to survive, even out here, if you're hanging in a tree, you can die of dehydration over that period of time. And if you're, not in a tree, you're typically somewhere where you can try to get rescued. But it's possible. It's possible that there's, people that have washed up on shore somewhere. They've got broken limbs. They can't call for help. And I promise you, the rescuers are doing everything they can. They've got every resource, every asset. They've got as many helicopters as they can have in the sky. They've got as many boats as they can have in the water. They have as many men on the ground, men and women on the ground, searching every corners of the shore. And as the water recedes, they continue to come inward. So they're doing everything possible. And that's our prayer, that if there are survivors still out there, that they will be found today. They'll be found now. And we'll have updates on that. We're anticipating another press conference in the next couple hours, probably closer to the 10 o'clock local time, 11 o'clock Eastern time. And we'll get an update at that point.
Okay, Ben, we'll check back with you later in the show. David and Job, and they all cried out in grief. And, it's okay to go to God and be angry and be frustrated, but know that he's on the throne. Ben, thank you. Appreciate it.
Amen.
All right, we're going to have more American Sunrise in 2 minutes. Stick around, everybody.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. Thank you for joining us. It is time now for today's health news. It is sponsored by the Wellness Company. Under this microscope today, breakthroughs in improving our hearing. Scientists in Sweden have been testing a new gene therapy to improve hearing. It was reportedly a small trial originally, but what they found was that injecting the gene OTOF improved hearing in just weeks. The trial included people who had a genetic mutation from the gene, and it caused deficiencies in protein. So the therapy reportedly worked better in children, but it's also effective in adults. The average decibel level for hearing sound improved drastically in just a mere amount of months. So very exciting. Don't forget to get your hearing addressed, by the way, if you're having any hearing problems, because there are new studies are also finding that lack of hearing can lead to Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia. So you want to make sure you have your hearing. A new administration in Washington, D.C. brought a lot of positive changes when it came to fixing our healthcare system. But the reality is that there's only so much government can do. And if you really want to make America healthy again, it starts at home. And that's where the Wellness Company comes in. They're doctors. You see them all the time on this network, and you know that their products are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you and your family safe and healthy. The Wellness Company gives you the opportunity to make sure you are prepared for whatever happens with their series of medical prescription kits. These kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of the meds. Additionally, the wellness company offers a variety of products from parasite cleanses to methylene blue to weight loss and so much more. These can help you stay healthy and live a longer, more satisfying life. Make America healthy again starts at home. Do your part. Protect the health of yourself and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV. Give it an order. That's twc.health/RAV. Use the promo code RAV. That'll save you 10%. All right, back over to you, David.
Hey, Gina, appreciate it. All right, now let's talk about ICE, and they had a busy 4th of July. We're seeing reports that ICE carried out operations in California. Officials say more than 1,600 people were apprehended in Southern California alone. They're now getting set to be deported. In response to all of this, protests broke out over the weekend. Of course they did. For more, let's bring in retired Navy captain and GOP strategist Armen Kurdian. Armen, so the One Big Beautiful Bill is now One Big Beautiful Law, and that means a lot as it relates, a lot of money as it relates to immigration enforcement. So we're talking about, my goodness, I have the stats here. Let me just go to it. $45 billion, another $100 billion to supercharge the mass deportation. So we're looking at close to $150 billion. So what does that look like in America going forward? Because we're talking about a boatload of cash. Tom Homan, very happy this morning.
Good morning, David, Dr. Gina. Well, certainly it's going to help pay for a lot more ICE agents. It's going to help for the enforcement and the transportation and logistics of moving these people in and out of the country. I'm going to venture to guess that some of that money that Trump had suggested for, like, say, hey, we'll give you $1,000 if you self-deport, leave the country for 3 years, and then maybe you can try yourself to come back in again. So it gives ICE and Department of Homeland Security a lot more options in order to make sure that a lot of these criminals and these folks who've come across the border improperly are sent back to their home nations. And perhaps for those who really do want to take a part of the American dream, give them a chance to start again.
Armen, Senate Republicans and Democrats have different proposals to stop drug cartel violence, which is a pervasive problem, as you know. Iowa Senator Joni Ernst called for law enforcement to handle it and praised them for putting their lives on the line to keep us safe. Illinois Senator Dick Durbin blamed the firearm industry and added that gun dealers are selling guns to the cartels. I don't know. I've gone into gun shops to buy guns, and I can tell you what they put you through. I guarantee you some cartel member could not get through. So what do you make of this?
Well, Dr. Gina, I have a time machine right here. Let's step back 15 years and go to Operation Lone Star, and let's see what Dick Durbin has to say about the government selling guns to cartels. So I will say absolutely, if there are gun manufacturers that are, I would assume, accidentally selling guns to cartels or members, I think that's absolutely fair to take a look to make sure that those guns don't fall into the hands of people that we don't want them to. But at the same time, let's be honest about what we've done in the past in terms of this government and selling guns to the cartels. It goes back to what root cause analysis is. What is gun violence? Is it because guns are out there, or is it because that we have a sick society, that people have mental health issues and have devalued life so much that they're going out and committing these gun crimes? That's not the fault of the gun industry. Maybe that's the fault of this country and us as a nation and as a society for not taking care of our people and not really understanding what's going on. And hopefully RFK Jr. is doing a little bit of that now in his position. So if you can take the guns out of the hands of people, but if you don't solve the root problem of why these acts are taking place, then the problem is still there.
Yeah. Hey, Armen, you're running for Congress out there. What's the district out there where you are in terms of immigration kind of on the street? What are you hearing from constituents out there?
Well, certainly. It's a 25% Latino district, and the vast majority of this district still approved Prop 36, which improves law enforcement activities. It made shoplifting illegal again, and on from that. And folks want the violent criminals out of the area, but being California, there are a majority of people also who don't like seeing ICE going and getting people who are perhaps in this country illegal but have committed no additional crimes. So, that's absolutely understandable from that standpoint. And for these poor ICE agents out there working on the 4th of July, the first thing that struck me was like, gosh, don't these guys get a holiday? It would be good for ICE to get all these criminals out. I'm sure that a lot of these folks who are getting swept up, who don't have any other crimes, simply were there perhaps at the same time that other criminal folks were, folks who had warrants out for their arrest or who had failed to meet, come into court for their asylum hearings ad infinitum. So I absolutely, I can understand the sentiment and the feeling around here, because it is a very heavy Democrat district. It is also a very heavy Latino district. So it's natural for them to feel that way. I think there's room for both sides to make progress on this issue. And I think there is also room to look at, federal immigration policies to make it easier to be a citizen for those people who are genuine, who want to share the American dream, who share our values, who want to learn English, be a part of society, start a business, and have their kids grow up to be American citizens.
Well said. Thank you, Armand Kurdian. Good to have you.
Thanks, Dr. Jeannie. Have a great day.
You too.
Thanks, Armand.
Coming up, Elon Musk says he is forming a new political party. What are some of the goals for the midterms next year if he's going to do it? We have the details. Can you do it? Can a third party happen in America? We're going to discuss coming up on American Sunrise.
And welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. So look, if you want to drink cafe quality coffee at home without the price tag or the compromise, have we got a deal for you? 1775 starter kit is packed with value and built for people who care about what they support. You're going to get 3 bags of coffee. You'll get 2 16-ounce bags of your choice, either dark or medium, plus their longevity blend. It's infused with anti-aging CAAKG. By the way, that is clinically shown to support healthy aging and reduce biological age. So you cover the 2 bags, and then 1775 covers the rest. So that's a full 16-ounce bag of coffee, plus premium gear. For example, a matte black tumbler, a frother, a gold scoop, or a reusable K-cup filter. So whether you drink whole bean, ground, or pods, I drink pods, it's really your call. You build the bundle. The coffee is organic, it's single origin, it's high altitude, and small batch roasted. It's smooth, it's clean, none of the jitter stuff, no crash, no bitterness, just darn good coffee. And by the way, all that for less than $1 a cup. Hey, $1 a cup. I like that expression. Made with integrity, and it's delivered with purpose. So here's what you do. You head to 1775coffee.com/RAV, and you grab your starter kit while it's still available. All right, time to send it over to T. Bates for more. T, to you.
David, thank you, sir. Now that we're caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. And this morning, Elon Musk is in the crosshairs as he has formed a new political party. The new party is called the America Party. Musk says initially the party will focus on 8 to 10 House seats and 2 to 3 Senate seats. All of this comes after he and President Trump have been feuding about the big, beautiful bill. For more, let's bring in Gina and David to talk a bit more about this. And guys, as we get into it, President Trump also responding to the formation of this new political party on Truth Social, writing, "I am saddened to watch Elon Musk go completely off the rails, essentially becoming a train wreck over the past 5 weeks." Again, that's a direct quote from President Trump's Truth Social post. What do you make of all of this? Is it going to get any traction, Dr. Gina? I think that's somewhat of a rhetorical question, but I'll just leave it open-ended.
It is a tragedy. I mean, I wish we could go back to the time when folks were working together who agreed on 90% of what needs to happen to fix our very broken body politic. But that's not going to happen. I think that many of us foresaw this. I think months and months ago, I remember sitting election night. We were at Mar-a-Lago here and looking at Elon and President Trump sitting at the table together, having a great time, like two guys in a cigar bar or something, and thinking, how long can this possibly last with that much alpha male happening? And so it almost seems inevitable from a psychological standpoint, which you know is what I study. I think, though, from a psychological standpoint also, Terrence, I want to warn that I feel like focusing on this right now when Republicans need and should have their eye on the prize of winning midterms, this can be a diversion that I think could get us caught up in something that is ancillary and a big distraction and could be detrimental and a real detractor coming up in terms of winning the midterms. David, I'd love your analysis.
No, you're absolutely right. He calls it America's party, but it's the spoiler party. That's what it is. I mean, he says 8 or so House districts and 2 to 3 Senate races. Let's be clear. He's talking about Republicans that he's going to back, or whatever he wants to call them, Musk and Republican combined type people. So the point is he's going after Republicans and he's splitting the party. So he might as well be working for the Democrats at this point. I mean, seriously. I mean, that's what it is. I mean, and so thanks, Elon Musk. Thanks for doing pretty much nothing, because you basically left and burned the house down. I truly believe, or he's trying to burn the house down. I truly believe this was all about money. Ultimately, he spent, what was it, close to $250 million, maybe $280 on Trump's reelection. And I think people like that think that they can just buy access and power and influence. And when Trump's always going to be his own man and was going to do things his way. And when Musk didn't kind of get his way on certain picks, whether it be on NASA and others, he got frustrated, and that's part of it. So I think part of it's sour grapes. I'm not saying he's not principled on the money stuff, but what's your point? I mean, if you really want to make a dent, go after the Democrats and kick those folks out of office. The Republicans that voted for the bill, they voted for a lot of Trump's agenda, most of Trump's agenda. So you're going to kick people out because they didn't, they went back on the spending aspect of this. I mean, give me a break. First of all, this is the more spending than Congress has ever cut, number one. So it's called, march it down the field, Elon. I mean, was this bill perfect? No. But, you got to see the forest from the trees here. And Elon Musk has just really done some real damage. And the sad part is the media is going to eat this up all the way to the midterms. And to your point, T. Bates, at the beginning, will this get traction? I don't know politically if it'll get traction, but from a media perspective, absolutely it'll get traction. This is Trump versus Elon. It's a splintering of the Republican Party and MAGA, and that's going to be the headlines, even though a lot of that is just not true, but that's what the media is going to run with.
Two absolute truths here. Number one, third parties don't work. Number two, those who promote them marginalize themselves. Terrence, sorry.
Yep. No, I'll just add number 3. Was Elon ever really MAGA? Just supporting Trump alone doesn't necessarily make you MAGA. Were the values really MAGA? I question that. You know what? You say they weren't. Dr. Gina, your thoughts? Because you saw him at Mar-a-Lago every now and then. You were really in tune with MAGA. Do you think Elon, do you consider Elon really having ever been MAGA?
Well, the thing about MAGA is that no individual gets to define it. So I don't get to say what MAGA is. MAGA is what it is to me. To me, MAGA is the ideals of the Tea Party, right? That's what it is to me. To Elon, I think it was just about business exploding, and he was just excited to see business come back. And then when it wasn't going the way he thought, he had a problem with it. So the thing about a people's movement, the thing about a populist movement is that it is not definable by one person. And that means not Gina Loudon, but it also means not Elon Musk, Terrence. I think that's an important thing to note.
That's a fair point, Dr. J. I never thought of it. Thank you. That's a fair point. It's an absolutely fair point. All right, coming up. Not even Donald Trump. No, that's a very good point, Dr. G. I really had never thought of it in those terms. Coming up, Texas is reeling from the devastating, deadly flooding that has killed scores of people. So how can faith sustain these communities? We'll talk about it next here on American Sunrise.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
All right, welcome back to American Sunrise. It's time now for our moment of faith. This is brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, finding faith in times of tragedy. The death toll in the Texas flood is approximately 80. I think it's over 80 now. Authorities are still searching for survivors, hoping against hope. During these times, we turn to our faith to try to begin the healing process. For more, let's bring in the president and CEO of Coral Ridge Ministries and the founder of the Institute for Faith and Culture, Dr. Robert Pacienza. Dr. Pacienza, it almost feels preachy, doesn't it, to say in a time like this, be sure you turn to your faith. But as I was mentioning, I'm doing a deep dive right now on hearing the voice of God, which is something I never gave a ton of thought to. I don't know what I thought. I don't know. It was something I kind of flew past. How do you hear the voice of God, though, in the midst of such tragedy?
Well, the reality is we all have faith in something. We have faith in ourselves. We have faith in our careers. We have faith in our future. The question in moments like this, we're reminded that we need to have faith in something bigger than ourselves. We need to have faith in the God that created us, and more importantly, the God that offers redemption through the person and work of Jesus Christ. And it's our prayer that people, whether they're in Texas, whether they're dealing with this tragedy directly, or whether they're watching from afar, would be reminded that we need to have faith in something that is eternal and something that never changes, and that something is a someone, the person and work of Jesus Christ.
And in times like these, you want to pray for people. You want to pray so effectively. And I remember thinking, well, actually it was with my colleague, David Brody, his daughter, Lena, going through cancer treatment right now. And I thought, I just want to pray as effectively as I've ever prayed for this family. And I find myself struggling with understanding how to most effectively pray when people are really going through something, to pray for them. Do you have suggestions?
Absolutely. Well, I'm not only a pastor, but I'm a father who's lost a child. And I can honestly say it's in those moments of tragedy that we're reminded of the God of the Old and New Testament, who declares that he weeps with those who weep and he mourns with those who mourn, and he moves closer to the brokenhearted. And most importantly, God is a father who lost his son, Jesus Christ. And so we can take comfort and we can pray for people to understand that this is not something you get over, but grief is something that you go through. But thanks be to God, we get to go through it with a God who walks with us, and he climbs in the valley with us. And so I think we can pray for those that are experiencing this tragedy to just be still and to know that God is there and that he weeps with them. And may it be the very tears of God that brings them comfort in the midst of this tragedy.
Oh, Dr. Paciens, I didn't realize you had lost a child. You want to tell us?
Yeah, we lost our daughter Lily about 7 years ago. She was 3 years old. She was our little angel. She was the youngest evangelist we knew. She would go around telling people if they knew Jesus. And so we know that we will be reunited with her one day. But in the midst of grief and in the midst of tragedy, that's where we find hope in the God that created us and the God that redeems us and the God who weeps with us. And we pray that the church would be the church in this moment for those that are struggling with loss in the state of Texas, that they would find their ultimate hope and faith and trust in the God who sent his son, Jesus Christ, to offer life and life eternal.
I knew there was a little sparkle in you. That's your little Lily, Dr. Robert Pacienza. Thank you so much for being with us, for sharing your story. Our prayers for continued just hope for your family, because it sounds like you turned that tragic situation into hope. And we can only pray the same for those facing such tragedy right now in Texas. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.
Back with the second hour of American Sunrise in 2 minutes.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
Ahead on this second hour of American Sunrise, it's a race against time as search and recovery crews in Texas are back at it this morning looking for survivors following the massive flash flooding that's devastating parts of the Lone Star State. We're live on the scene and monitoring how you and your family can help those who have lost everything. Plus, General Michael Flynn, the first national security advisor to President Trump, says he was targeted by the FBI because he was a direct threat to a deep state plot to discredit and derail the president. Flynn also says he was falsely branded a traitor to his country. He joins us live to set the record straight in just a couple of minutes. And instead of July 4th messages of pride and patriotism in our country, Democrats project thoughts of doom and gloom. We're not talking about your crazy conspiracy theory-loving neighbor here, but the people who have and may have had the nuclear codes at their disposal. We're naming names ahead on this second hour of American Sunrise.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
And welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from D.C. Let's bring in Dr. G in West Palm and T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning to both of you guys. This has been a heavy show. I don't think there's any question about it. It makes you really kind of wonder about, just the brevity of life at times and when tragedy strikes. But Dr. G, look, God doesn't promise us the answers in the Bible. He doesn't promise us all the answers. And we have to kind of rest and maybe wrestle with that to a degree.
Yeah, it's always interesting in our own grief. I think sometimes in mine, I've said, I've asked the why question like we do. And then I realize that there is nothing that we walk through that he didn't walk through first. And if you really remember, whether it's rejection or grief or embarrassment or just yearning, the deep yearning of the soul that people go through in different parts of life, whatever it is, he went through it first. And if you really look at the life of Jesus Christ, moment by moment, you will find those moments where he is just so close to you. And I think that's what Dr. Pacienda was saying. It is in those moments that we're really walking through the hard times, Terrence, that he's the absolute closest to us. And I think that's a beautiful and reassuring thought.
And for people of faith, that no matter what you're walking through, Jesus is walking right alongside you, whether he's supporting you in the way that you think you want to be supported or not, but he's walking right alongside you. Camp Mystic, of course, the all-girls camp that was devastated by the flooding, just releasing a statement this morning saying, and I'm going to quote, that it is grieving the loss of 27 campers, a statement going on to say, we have been in communication with local and state authorities who are tirelessly deploying extensive resources to search for our missing girls. We are deeply grateful for the outpouring of support from the community, first responders, and officials at every level. So a lot of work and a lot of support being offered there at Camp Mystic, but unfortunately still dozens of young girls have passed away as a result of the deadly flooding there. Still a sad situation.
Yeah. And counselors, and I believe the director of the camp, Caroline, said as well. It's just a tragic story all the way around. And then remember that there's 60 some others out there, or 50 some others, I guess, my math, who are also mourning and grieving losses, and some still not found.
Well, we'll be talking a lot more about this, obviously, throughout the hour. Ben Berquam is going to join us here in a little bit. So we want to turn our attention now to Washington, D.C. and a justice system in question. President Trump's former national security advisor and retired Army Lieutenant Colonel General Michael Flynn had a long and distinguished career, a wonderful one. He was dragged through the legal system, eventually pled guilty to charges of lying to the FBI about his conversations with a Russian agent, but it doesn't end there. General Flynn now suing the federal government. He claims he was wrongfully prosecuted. He was targeted by the FBI because he was a direct threat to a, quote, deep state plot to discredit and derail President Trump. The president ultimately pardoned General Flynn, as we know. He has captured it all, General Flynn, in his best-selling new book. It's called Pardon of Innocence. The book has been endorsed by President Trump himself. It is just out, and General Michael Flynn joins us now. General, really appreciate your service and for being here this morning. And we do want to talk to you about your book. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about what's happened in Texas and maybe offering some words of encouragement or what you can say to that now. And then we'll, of course, get to your book. I know priorities here for sure.
Yeah, a couple of things. And I've written 8 books, actually. And all of the books that I write, I always talk about faith. And I think that this is really for what is going on in the country today, because we tend to have a sense of hopelessness sometimes, especially some of these people that are looking for their children. Oh, my God. But I think what we seek in life is we seek hope. And we seek hope for those that have the strength of faith, or even for those that lost it at some point in their lives and now are out there trying to find it through whatever path. From my perspective, I always write about faith, family, and freedom, or faith, family, and what I call true friends. And I was, off before we came on. I don't know whether I was talking to the producer or you, David. But as a young child, I was in 3rd grade. I lost my sister, Lenny, in a very tragic accident. She was actually in a coma for 6 months. I'm one of 9 children. My parents went through, emotional hell. And because they had to basically watch their oldest daughter, their oldest child, who tragically died, but was in a coma for 6 months, die for 6 months. They had to watch her. I know my mother went up there she went to the hospital every night. And so, for me and my memories of that, because, you never forget, but what you do is you can find some renewal, in your lives, or certainly in your faith, if you so choose. And I think that this is where right now you're in this, where everybody's in this going to be in this very emotional state. It's a very, very difficult time. But I would tell you, having lived through that as a child, as a sibling of a child, and I was very close to my sister Lenny, very close to her. She damn near raised me, because my father was also in the military. My mother was a working woman, so raising kids, right? So I always write about faith first, because if we learn anything from life, we learn that when the most difficult times exist in our lives, the one thing that we can return to is our faith, whether it's praying quietly, whether it's going back to church, whether it's going to a group of people who you love and who love you back. And that's why I've written quite a bit about true friendship, because true friendship matters in a time like this. You find when the times are most difficult, when the times are most difficult, that true friends come to you and embrace you and help you and never leave you. And I think from my experiences as a child, having lived through what we lived through as a sibling of, as a person who was a sibling of a child, an older sister who died very tragically, we could have fallen apart. We could have lost everything, just lost our minds, right? But instead, it was our faith that brought us back together and strengthened our family. And that's why I always write about faith and family. That's what this book, Pardon of Innocence, is really about. It's not about a woe is me. It's about how we as Americans, we fight for each other. We fight for hope. We stand with each other. We stand for hope. We stand for hope in the future and better things to come. We don't know, when our day is going to be. We don't know why that day is going to come or when it's going to come. What we know is that when it happens, are we prepared? Are we prepared in our faith? And that's why I think that, maybe it's appropriate that that I'm here today to strengthen you guys, because I was listening to Gina prior for a few minutes, and it's very emotional. This is a very, very difficult time. I have been through many difficult times in my life. I've never lost a child, and so I cannot imagine that. I can certainly have compassion for what they are going through, But what we need to understand as Americans is that our strength lies in our faith in God, period. That's what how our country was founded upon. That's what we fought for. And that's what we continue to fight for. And that's why, I continue to be as visible, as public, and many times as controversial as possible, because we are moving further and further away as a nation from our Christian roots. And it is these moments, and I can only speculate, these moments that come to us as American citizens when these sort of tragedies happen. I don't know why, I don't know when, I don't know how. I just know that the one thing that we always talk about during these moments is our faith, and we have to return to that. And I always have said very publicly, very many times, that prayer is the most powerful weapon system known to man. I talk about that in the book, actually, because if you give up on prayer, then you give up on life. And you can be chained to a wall, lying on your back, and you can, with all of your freedoms taken, but you can still pray. And I think that's my message here this morning with you guys, is that, it's not about the direction of our country. Oh my God, Trump has enough challenges on his plate every single morning. It's about what is really meaningful in our lives, right?
Yeah.
And when a tragedy like this strikes, and these parents are going through incredible levels of grief, and they will for a while, and there will be those who will outreach to them, and that's a good thing, because those others who have gone through this type of tragedy will reach out to these parents, and maybe there will be groups formed, and there will be good things that will come out of this.
Yeah.
Like that young man that you had on the show just prior to me, Gina, who took a tragedy and turned it into triumph, right? And I think that's the message. We have to fight every single day for what we believe in.
Yeah.
And when certain things happen, when tragedy strikes, how do you want to be? Do you want to be, meek and fall on your backside, or do you want to be strong and stand in the fulcrum of your own legacy, your own life, your own family, and fight back to recover some goodness that was part of these young children's lives? Because they were all good. These were all great young people, right? And others who were devastated by this, but certainly these young children whose lives were ahead of them. So let's send that message. Let's make that message our message, our collective message as Americans, to say, let's make something good of this, and let's look at the future and make it brighter.
Well, we appreciate you coming on this show and giving us such a word of encouragement, General. When we had you on the show to talk about your book, it will be next on my Audible. The book is called Pardon of Innocence, an inspiring story of faith and freedom. Perhaps living it more today than talking about it. General Flynn, thank you so much for being with us. And thank you for your service to our country and to our president. Thank you.
God bless, guys.
God bless you. All right, we'll be back in just a moment.
breaking news from Real America's Voice.
Welcome back to American Sunrise, everyone. I'm Terrence Bates. We want to turn our attention back to what's happening in Texas. Torrential rains have killed scores of people there. Here's a look at how this tragedy has unfolded over the past couple of days.
A horrible tragedy down in Texas.
Deluge of rain. It came in hard and fast. What that resulted in was a deadly cresting.
In a matter of minutes, it was up to 29 feet.
Is nothing short of biblical.
I'm asking the people of Texas, do some serious praying this afternoon.
This is like a major hurricane.
The Camp Mystic Christian camp, some kids camped out for the 4th of July.
26 feet in 45 minutes? Is that possible?
You know, that is possible. Got 6 confirmed fatalities. I pray that that does not increase. If they're alive and safe, we will find them and bring them home to you.
We're going to follow nonstop on Real America's Voice, also over at Weather Nation.
This is right downtown Kerrville. When you see just trees snap like twigs, pray for this community.
Today will be a hard day.
The town manager comes up and says it's going to be a very tough day today. I think that's a tell. Got people running to the sound of the guns to find these children, to rescue them.
Over 260 rescues yesterday. This is a positive note, obviously.
We recovered 27 deceased fatalities at this time.
It was an 8 and 9-year-old camp, and a couple of the camp buildings were swept away.
There are still 27 missing from Camp Mystic.
Back on your knees saying prayers.
We called 911 again. There was no people.
This kind of stuff really reminds you of what's really important. These communities all coming together. This is what America is all about.
Looks like some young people have died. We'll take care of them. We're working with the governor. We're working with the governor. It's a terrible thing.
We are going to address everybody's concern, and there is extraordinary collaboration.
We're finding people as fast as possible, and we're returning them to their families.
The city officials here immediately sprung into action.
We will rescue those in peril, and we will find those who are missing.
We're all working together, we're all communicating, and we will not stop.
You can go back and look at your own forecast, and the amount of rain that fell in this specific location was never in any of those forecasts. You're all in media, you got that forecast. It did not predict the amount of rain that we saw.
My thanks to President Trump and Secretary Noem for responding so quickly.
We still have work to do. We're still prayerful. We're still hopeful. We also have volunteers all over this county that do the job for free, that we're out there working to save lives, many times putting their own lives and their property at risk.
Having covered the North Carolina and Tennessee, Georgia, Hurricane Helene and the disaster, I mean, I'm already seeing a huge difference here, the way the federal government is. I just thank God President Trump's in there. I thank God Kristi Noem's in there. Lift them up in your prayers.
Our first responders are rock stars and heroes, what they do, and they're exhausted. They've been doing this now for several days, and it's not going to end anytime soon.
Lord, I just lift them up to you right now, especially if there's any girls that are still alive that are afraid, they're alone. I just pray you'd be with them right now. Lord, I pray in this situation that you would be the God of comfort to this community, but you would do miracles from now on, and we would see miracles happen. I pray for your hand on this community, in this state, in this nation. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you guys. God bless America. We'll continue to cover it. Stay tuned.
You are an audience on Patriots, and one of the things I know about Patriots in this country is that we pitch in when our fellow Patriots and fellow countrymen are in need. And so there are several opportunities for you to pitch in and help out there in Central Florida. Cross Kingdom Church, you can reach them via Venmo at Cross Kingdom 77 if you'd like to donate there for recovery and efforts. The Kerr County Flood Relief Fund, you can find that online as well. All of this information here on your screen as well. Of course, you can always go to the American Red Cross of Central and South Texas and donate or offer up support there. And then there's the Austin Pets Alive group. Those are just a few of the agencies who are offering rescue, recovery, and relief efforts there in the Central Texas area. So if you'd like to donate, you can donate to any of these agencies here on your screen. We're back with more American Sunrise in a moment. A live look at the White House here, where President Trump will be hosting Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli prime minister, later on today. The president also scheduled to sign some new executive orders today. We, of course, will be covering all of that for you live here on Real America's Voice. In the meantime, getting ready for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange this Monday morning, not starting off on such a great note. As you can see, the Dow, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all in the red now. Gold, silver also down. The only bright spot, if you will, is crude oil, which happens to be up at the moment. We'll take you to New York for the opening bell at the stock exchange here in short order. But first, let's get you over to David Brody.
Okay, T. Bates, appreciate it. Joining us now before the opening bell is the host of the early edition of American Sunrise. That'd be Jake Novak. We know Jake. He's up earlier than us. Jake, good to see you. So let's talk about this, because the markets have been on a great winning streak, but Wednesday could be a potential new roadblock if investors don't learn from what's happened already this year. Let's talk about that. Good morning.
Good morning. Well, the first thing they should learn is not to listen to any
Jake, give me
deadlines.
a second. We've got Ben Berquam with Ted Cruz. So sorry, breaking news. Let's go to that now. Stand by, Jake. Do we have it, guys? We don't have it. Okay. Well, we are waiting. We're always standing by for some sort of breaking news. So, Jake, take it away until we have it.
Well, Wednesday could be a big day. Would have been a big day, David, if they didn't learn that deadlines and this trade deals that are going on don't mix. The president has been using different strategies as he's been negotiating with other countries. So, as you remember, David, in April, when the market freaked out, hit a year low on expecting these tariffs to go into place at a particular time, at a particular place against certain countries. And then it didn't turn out that way. And so we just had that happen just again. We were expecting Wednesday to be the beginning of a bunch of new tariffs.
Now we got 30 seconds. Yeah, now we got him. All right, Senator Ted Cruz with Ben Berquam in Kerrville, Texas. Ben, go ahead.
Hey, thank you, David. I actually am out here with Senator Ted Cruz. Senator, just an absolute tragedy. Your state. Talk to us about your feelings, your experience this morning.
Well, listen, Texas, what has happened here is heartbreaking, and our state is grieving at a level that there are a lot of tears, there's a lot of agony over the flooding that happened. Kirk County, where we are right now, in the hill country, is, I think, the prettiest part of Texas. The Guadalupe River is a beautiful river right now. It is still at higher levels and running faster, and it is. I've floated and gone swimming in this river dozens of times, and for a century, this has been an oasis where kids, Texans, little boys and little girls come to summer camp, and what happened with this floods? We now have 82 confirmed fatalities. 28 of those are children. There's still 10 kids that are missing from Camp Mystic. And this is every parent's nightmare. Every little boy, every little girl who goes to camp, mom and dad are celebrating, and the nightmare of losing their child. I'll tell you, in the last several days, I've spoken with multiple parents who were just panicking, whose little girl was on the list of missing, and they don't know what to do. And I've tried to connect them with the sheriff, with emergency management, with the search and rescue teams. But there's enormous grief going on. At the same time, I think we've seen incredible heroism, incredible bravery. We had over 850 rescues from the flooding. We saw the Coast Guard with incredible heroism, and the National Guard with incredible heroism, and we saw DPS with incredible heroism. And we see that every time there is a crisis, a natural disaster in Texas, Texans come together. They help each other. Some of the stories of bravery from this flooding, Eagle Scouts helping little campers out of their cabins, saving their lives. One woman who floated 4 miles down this river with debris and everything floating by her, grabbed a tree, held onto the tree. She was rescued. We're seeing great bravery. And we're also seeing an outpouring of love. I want to say to everyone across Texas and across the country, thank you for your prayers. Thank you for your love. Texans feel it. Those moms and dads that are living through this nightmare right now, they feel your love and prayer and lifting them up. We will come through this, but it is a time of great grief.
You know, and that's obviously the focus still, the 10 missing young girls. I'm a dad of 3 young girls, and I cannot imagine my daughter's out. It's so heartbreaking. And I look at some of what the coverage is and second guessing, Monday morning quarterbacking. I'm from Arkansas now and from Texas. You know, these weather systems are, you have no idea what's coming. What is your message to the people out there? Obviously, the focus right now is on finding those little girls, finding the missing, restoring them to their families, and the grief and prayers for those families. But what's your message on all the rest where you see the media trying to shift blame and already playing that game?
Well, listen, the focus needs to be in any crisis on the first stage of search and rescue, getting people out of harm's way. And that has got to be the priority, and it has been the priority. We've still got 10 girls that are missing. We are praying that those girls are found safe, and that is critically important. Then there's rebuilding and recovery. And look, there are people throughout Central Texas who have lost their homes, who've lost everything. And this is where the church really matters. The church is stepping up. And look, the church should be doing this every day, but in the face of crisis is especially a time to show God's love, to help your neighbor, to feed and clothe your neighbor, to help comfort a grieving mom or dad with an inconsolable pain. All of that is critical. You talked about your 3 daughters. I'm a girl dad. I have 2 daughters. My daughters have gone to camp right here in Hunt, Texas for a decade. Just last week, we picked our youngest daughter up from camp right here. It was just a few days before this flooding occurred. And so as we're watching this, and look, the kids that go to camp here come from all over the state. So we have friends and neighbors whose girls were at Camp Mystic. We have classmates of my daughters at school who are 3rd graders who were either killed or are still missing. And it's not the way it's supposed to work. Kids are supposed to bury your parents. Your daughters are supposed to bury you. My daughters are supposed to bury me. And when a child is taken, it's, I think, the hardest pain of anything. You asked about the politicization, and you're right. With any tragedy, there are people that try to play politics with it. They try to blame their political opponents. And in today's partisan world, if there's a hurricane, if there's a tornado, if there's a flood, there are some who want to say it's all Donald Trump's fault because everything bad they say is Donald Trump's fault. I think that is wrong. It is inappropriate. And I think most people don't want to see partisan finger pointing. What they want to see is let's come together and let's get through this. And then afterwards, after we rebuild, there does need to be a process of carefully looking back and saying, okay, what could have been done differently to save more lives? How could the response have been better? We know that the warnings went out from the National Weather Service just after 1 a.m. and just after 4 a.m. Obviously, most people were asleep then, and they missed those warnings. And so I think it's perfectly reasonable to have a conversation. We know floods will occur, natural disasters occur. How can we be better at being proactive? And in hindsight, everyone would agree that we should not have had little girls, particularly 7- and 8-year-old, the youngest girls on the camp, in cabins right by the river's edge as the flood warnings were coming out. And in hindsight, I hope we have a better system to have an early warning and then act proactively to remove the children, remove anyone vulnerable from harm's way to prevent this loss of life. That's a reasonable and, in fact, very important conversation to have. but it shouldn't be in the context of just trying to score political points. It should be learning lessons. And by the way, we do that with regard to hurricanes. I'm from Houston. We deal with hurricanes all the time on the Gulf Coast. And as we go through multiple hurricanes, you learn lessons about, all right, how do you proactively get people out of harm's way to reduce the loss of life? And I hope in the face of this horrible tragedy that if one positive thing comes out of it, it is that we improve our emergency response to be quicker and more effective getting people out of harm's way so that we're not dealing with this kind of terrible loss of life.
Amen. Well, God bless you. Thank you for being out here, and we continue to pray for the families, for the victims. As you said, as a dad, especially the parents that have lost their children, we lift them up, and we ask you to do the same. Amen. Thank you, sir. Everyone, Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz from Texas. David, are you guys still with us? Did you want to add anything? You guys got it?
Texas, if you can. Texas Governor Greg Abbott also spoke on the tragedy in the Lone Star State. Take a look at this.
I had the opportunity yesterday to visit Camp Mystic and get to see firsthand what happened there, as well as all the way downstream after that. And it was nothing short of horrific to see what those young children went through. And we will remain 100% dedicated, searching for every single one of the children who were at Camp Mystic, as well as anybody else in the entire riverbed, to make sure that they're going to be recovered.
All right, Ben and Senator Cruz, you're still there. Just want to give you a chance to react to what Governor Abbott was saying, and Ben, if you can ask Senator Cruz, what does he foresee in terms of changes that might be policy related to this?
And the senator's on comm, so he heard all that. Go ahead, Senator.
Well, listen, I think there will be a careful retrospective that will look at how do you proactively avoid this sort of crisis in the future. Steps that strike me as natural. Number one, I think it's worth reassessing. Do you have cabins right along the river's edge? If you look at some of the cabins in these camps are higher up in the hills, they're further from the water. I think that clearly is safer. And also, what was the process when there were warnings as early as the afternoon that flooding was possible? The warnings got much more severe and urgent as the night went on. What's the process to make sure that you don't have everybody asleep when you realize that a crisis is coming? Because what we all wish had happened is before this flood hit, we wish that someone had gone down and taken these girls and put them in a truck, put them in a van, and taken them up to higher ground. And if that had happened, we would have a much lower loss of life. The RVs that were right along the river, that were swept into the river, look, tragically, you see when you have tornadoes and hurricanes and flooding, mobile homes and RVs are particularly vulnerable to that. And so in terms of the early warning, and as I said, I actually think the hurricane analogy has a lot to apply here. With hurricanes now, I think we're much more proactive in saying, okay, there's a hurricane that's coming. What are the homes that are right on the water's edge that are the most vulnerable? And sending law enforcement in there. And you've got people who are stubborn, I don't want to leave, and sending people to say, look, it is really critical you leave. I wish we had done a better job at getting people out of harm's way, and I hope coming out of this that we can put in place processes for the next flood that happens. And there will be another flood, there will be another tornado, there will be another hurricane. But we can do a more effective job being proactive in terms of removing people from vulnerable locations.
Senator David Brody here. We've known each other for a very long time. It's good to see you not under these circumstances. Your father, obviously, Rafael Cruz, a pastor. You have a deep faith. I'm wondering if you can address to our audience the question, and it's an age-old question, when God doesn't make sense. I know Pastor James Dobson wrote a book about this. I'm curious to get your thoughts in this time. Good morning to you.
David, it's a question that everyone struggles with. And why does God allow bad things to happen to good people? Why does God allow bad things to happen to young children? And I will say there are theologians and pastors who've been unable to answer that question for millennia, and I don't know that I have any additional insight other than saying God is a good and loving God, and he will help us through this. And I will say in the last few years, I've got several friends who have tragically lost children, and I think it is the hardest challenge to go through, and all I know to do is to lean on God, to lean on prayer, to lean on family, to lean on friends, and just grieve. But it is a grieving process, and look, I think every mom and dad this week has asked themselves, what if that was me? What if that was my little girl? What if that was my little boy?
Yeah.
We have a good and benevolent God, but God allows things to happen sometimes that defy human explanation, and that's where we need love and where we need grace. And this is a time in particular for the church to do what the church should be doing every day, but in a time of grief, I think the church has a particular responsibility to step up, and I do think Texas has benefited. We have such a strong community of believers in Texas that you have churches that step in and do the role we should.
Senator Cruz, we appreciate your time. We understand that you've got to get going, but we appreciate you taking out a few minutes to be here with us. Continued support for your family and for your state. Thank you so much, Senator Cruz. Ben, if you'll stick around, we want to continue our coverage here. Senator Cruz, again, thanks so much. All right. Ben, we appreciate you securing that interview. This is such a difficult time, and I feel you. You and I have spoken a lot about our daughters, and so when you hear these sorts of stories, I think as girl dads, it hits us even more. Not that it doesn't hit anyone else, but I think it affects us that much more. Talk about today. Let's kind of move the story forward, because I was reading earlier today, Ben, that there's even more rain in the forecast, and I'm sure that by now you've had an opportunity to talk to some of the rescue and search crews out there, some of the first responders. Relay some of the stories that they're relaying to you, and the emotional impact that all of this is having on them as they're trying to do their job, trying to save lives, but also seeing the reality of what is there on the ground.
Yeah, well, just to your point, Terrence, we were under flood watch up until 7 p.m. last night, so you had, rain on top of the already this disaster we have. Really what it did was just create more fear in the community. People, wondering, is it going to flood again? Thankfully, we didn't see near the amount of flooding, but this isn't the only area where this is happening. The entire Texas Hill Country has been hit by this, both downstream on the Guadalupe, but also a lot of the tributaries around this area, several hundred miles, where this all the way up to Austin, where this weather system basically just parked for the last several days and dumped just unbelievable amounts of water. And so that was the big fear. Looking at the forecast going forward, nothing to the extent of what we've seen over the last several days. There are showers in the forecast, but nothing like we saw on the 4th of July or the 3rd of July, or even some of what we saw yesterday. So thank God for that. It looks like it's going to be drying out, at least not to the flood stage levels. To the first responders, these are some of the bravest, toughest, best Americans that we have, and the community as well. The community is coming together in such a way. I just had a couple come up to me and tell me about the Church of Christ, local Church of Christ. And by the way, I want to make a couple comments. I'm going to pull this up on my phone real quick so I don't get it wrong. There are a couple organizations that we want to highlight. First off, the Community Foundation of Texas Hill Country. That's the primary organization that we're recommending, that locals are recommending to donate to. That goes directly to the local community, unlike the Red Cross, who may take that money and use it on illegals the next time the illegal invasion happens. Yes. If you give to that the Community Foundation of Texas Hill Country, that money is going to stay here with this community. There's also, I just spoke to this couple on Harper Road, 625 Harper Road, Kerrville, the United Church of Christ in town. They just got a massive truck in, a semi-truckload of supplies, anything people need. This is an issue. This is a disaster that isn't a day long, not a week long, not a month long. This is going to be a years long rebuilding, recovery, restoration process. And so the organizations are coming together, but that's what I would recommend. Talk to the local churches, talk to the local organizations. And for the first responders, pray for them, continue to lift them up, thank them. In particular, these guys that are out there 72 hours. Some of these guys haven't slept. Some of them have just been nonstop. We heard about the rescue swimmer, first time out in the water, saved over 165 people. I'm sure that's much more than that. That was as of yesterday in his first going out to rescue lives. So all of these first responders, everybody is giving everything they have. They're not sleeping. And in fact, they're rightfully annoyed at the media. They're doing these press conferences and they're not answering very many questions afterwards because their primary focus is on saving lives and recovering lives. And so just give them some leeway, give them some breathing room, let them do their job. I was at the morgue yesterday, and I'll just tell you, I saw several bodies being brought in while I was there. And, when you see a baby, a young child in the situation, in the state that they're in now, it's really hard. It's really hard to do that job, and these guys are doing that over and over and over again. So I can't say enough about what they're doing, and in particular why it's so important that we focus on that, on the life, on the tragedy, but also on the miracles that have happened, on the restoration of families, on lifting these communities up, and in particular, bringing the communities and our country back together. Sadly, it's events like this that sometimes it takes for us to remember what's important. And when you have something like this, you realize we are a United States of America. The Texas, in particular, the Texas community, they are a united family, and that's what I pray. I pray that we become more united out of this. We do find solutions that we can to any problem that we have. We always should be looking for potential solutions to fix it in the future. But the most important thing we can do as a people is come together, and that's my prayer for this community and for our country.
Yeah, Ben, I heard you speak about being a father. I heard one woman interviewed. Her husband woke her family. They were at a family camp. They had cabins right on the very front of the river there, as well as you're discussing. Her husband stayed up all night because he was just nervous. He just had a feeling about it. And he woke them in the middle of the night and said, grab the dogs, grab each other, don't take our things, go up to the bathhouse. They got up to the bathhouse, watched all of the cabins down below washed away, as a man came out of the bathhouse and said, oh my gosh, my whole family is down there. So these are the sorts of things that people will have to grapple with, as you mentioned, not for days, for weeks, for months. This is years of recovery and hopefully years of prayer, Ben. And thank you for mentioning that community foundation for Texas Hill Country, because you don't know what the Red Cross is going to do with your money. Some very corrupt policies there. So we want to make sure that is emphasized as well. Ben, thanks for pointing that out. And,
can I just quickly say one thing just before we go to break? It's also important to understand that up in that hill country, cell service is extremely spotty. So this idea that the warnings came in and people are starting to say, maybe they didn't heed the warnings. Come on, folks. I mean, the truth of the matter is that it's very difficult to get cell service up there. We're seeing people in our chat talk about this, and I wanted to represent the chat and others that are saying we need to have some understanding and grace and just reality of what happens up there in Hill County. So I just wanted to point that out.
That woman that was interviewed, that she watched as this man, she'd gotten her whole family up to the bathhouse to a higher level where it was safe, watched this man come out and say, oh my gosh, that was my whole family's cabin that just went under. That woman said, now we think, oh my gosh, why didn't we honk the horn? Why didn't we do something? Well, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. You're thinking if the flood isn't happening that you're afraid of, you're going to be the really bad guy for waking everyone at 3 in the morning. I mean, people were having to make those kinds of split-second decisions, Ben.
Yeah, and if I can jump in on that too, living in Arkansas now, we're used to this. We're used to seeing weather forecasts that are tornado warnings, no tornado comes, massive flooding, no flooding happens. Then you don't get any warning, and all of a sudden flooding happens. That's how, and it's not even the prediction models. It's just the weather. It'll change. There'll be clouds that were coming here, all of a sudden we're getting dumped on, and then they disappear. The way the weather systems work down here. you can't predict. I mean, it's very, very difficult to predict exactly when and where that's going to happen. And as you mentioned, on top of that, at the time of that, to try to second guess, how do we do that? The other thing,
Ben, I'm so sorry, Ben. They're yelling in my ear
go
here.
ahead.
But thank you so much for being so generous with your time and your heart and your prayer. And some American Sunrise will return just right after these messages. Thanks, Ben.
Let's spill some tea.
Welcome back, everyone. I'm Terrence Bates. It is time to spill some tea, and it's sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTeaCo.com is the website. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each can be used not just once, but twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. ArtilleryTeaCo.com. Again, that's the website. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. All right, let's get right into what's in the cup today. And we're talking about sour grapes and bitter herbs. Check out this headline, which reads, Democrats project doom and gloom, not celebration with 4th of July messages. We're talking about people who are actually at the helm of the United States. First up, the woman who might have been the first female president of the United States, who now can't just seem not to spit poison, unlike her word salads that left us all pretty confused. The former vice president was straight to the point and said, quote, this 4th of July, I'm taking a moment to reflect. Things are hard right now. They are probably going to get worse before they get better, she wrote. President Obama taking it one step further, saying, quote, at this moment in history, when core democratic principles seem to be continuously under attack, when too many people around the world have become cynical and disengaged, now is precisely the time to ask ourselves tough questions about how we can build our democracies and make them work in meaningful and practical ways for ordinary people. That's from the former president there. Let's bring in David and Dr. Gina to discuss this a little bit more. During what should have been a celebratory time, a time to celebrate our nation's independence and its history, some of those comments not really ringing very patriotic to some people, David.
Yeah, the doom and gloom party. And it's not just Barack Obama and Kamala Harris. It's the Democrats writ large. Their message is, oh my gosh, Trump's evil and the world is collapsing. And what has that got them? Got them a second Trump term, by the way, Gina.
Yeah, I mean, it does feel like doom and gloom to them because they have become such a hedonistic, dishonest party that they don't have anywhere to go from here. They're in a literal tailspin, downward spiral. And the more they try to talk their way out of it, it seems the more they just lie and try to deceive the American public, and the more the American public distrusts them and goes toward the party that, let's be honest, the Republican Party is far from perfect. I can do a laundry list, having been involved in this party for decades now. But let me say this. Many in the Republican Party have taken the lead of President Trump and become much more authentic in their approach to politics. Just even citing their own weaknesses, just being themselves, whether the American public goes, that's the way a politician is supposed to act or not, right? So the Democrats could really take a page right now, stop and reflect. The first thing they honestly need to do is come back to God. The Democrat Party did not used to be the party of godlessness. It is now. And there's never going to be a blessing in that. So until they wake up to that factoid, then they could maybe start to rebuild. But I don't know what they do until then, Terrence.
We're going to have to leave the conversation there. Appreciate your guys' insight. We're back with more American Sunrise after this.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Dr. G. We thank you for joining us today. Thanks to all of you in the chat. I just want to say for being so, I don't know. I feel like I learned so much there. I know David and Terrence feel the same way. Before we sign off, we, of course, want to pray for strength for the victims and survivors of the Texas floods. I can't get the images out of my head. I feel like, there's just so many times in life where you're really called back to who you are at your core. And I feel like this, if there's one good thing that can be taken out of the tragedy, maybe that's a step into it, David. I don't know.
Yeah, and you know what? And I think it's okay to say, I don't know. I think we're all saying, I don't know. Not about God. God sits on the throne. There's no doubt about it. And his purposes are good, even when we see horrible tragedies. And that's why I think a lot of people just can get confused. But look, we live in a sinful world, and we live in a world that is, it's got a lot of, these are just tragedies. I don't know. There's just a whole lot of theological stuff to get through. But let me just say this. I so much enjoy being part of RAV because we see all of this through a prism of God. And we're just not going to get that coverage anywhere else. We're just not, especially as it relates to kind of like the mainstream secular television networks.